if I had one animal out of everything I've ever killed to say, this is my bow hunting memory, it would be a 65-pound doe, the first one I shot after I came back and started hunting again after I was a security contractor. And I still remember his yellow fletching like this. And I remember that yellow fletching turning, and disappearing right in the crease. And I just remember, I mean, I can still see those feathers turning as a hitter. I was just like, God, thank you, Father, for making me a bow hunter.
I was like, well, if I throw a mic on, then I can help others the way that these people have all helped me.
Born in the heart of the Pennsylvania deer camp, with the help of experts, friends, and local legends, we bring you valuable knowledge and powerful stories for your hunting adventures. Welcome to the East Meets West Hunt Podcast with your host, Beau Martonik.
All right, we're live. Alan Altizer, welcome to the podcast.
I appreciate it. Appreciate you coming down.
Well, I appreciate you welcoming me into my home here as well.
Yeah.
Or your home, excuse me. Into your home here in Tennessee. I was really excited to come down and one, get to meet you and get to talk to you. I've seen you for years. I've listened to you and some of the most people that I hold at the highest regards look at you as their mentors of, Nathan Killens of the world and everyone else. And I really do appreciate it.
No, thank you. And thank you for the kind words. I hope I didn't corrupt Nathan too much. But
if that's corruption, I wouldn't mind being corrupted. So
he's such a good guy. And, the whitetail hunter he's become, I mean, it just makes me smile, my heart smile.
Yeah.
And, Nathan and he's gracious enough he shows me what he's finding, and we're looking at stuff and maps, even on Dreamcatcher.
Yeah.
I remember the first time he showed that to me, he's like, man, you think he's like 150? I'm like, Nathan, that buck's in 160s. And this was the year before he killed it. And, but just watching that, and I was telling you earlier, I had just came out of surgery. I was in Nashville, and I had been released, but was staying in Nashville for a week after the surgery just in case any problems. And the first morning, it was like my phone, ding, and I look, and my son had killed a deer. And it was first time without me, and I was like, oh, man, this is such a great time. I was so excited, just waiting. And then all at once I heard, later in the morning or up in the day that Nathan had killed Dreamcatcher. And I was like, oh, my gosh. And, I could not have been any happier for anybody. And don't take it wrong, Gabe, but even if it had been Gabe had killed a Boone and Crockett that morning, I'm more excited that Nathan did because of, the work he had done on that deer, and I know all that he puts into it over the years. I mean, that deer was not that season or before. That was a lifetime getting to that deer. And I know it was a lifetime accomplishment for Nathan wanting to kill a deer of that caliber in Virginia. And it could not happen to a better guy, because as much as I respect him as, as a whitetail hunter, I respect Nathan Killen as a Christian, as a friend, as a little brother 1,000 times more.
Yeah.
Than I do as a whitetail hunter. And, I'm the same way about Gene Wenzel, but you don't get any better people than Nathan.
Yeah. We were talking about that, and Nathan, if Nathan's listening to this, hopefully he feels good about it, because you and I were talking on the phone, and I said the same thing. Ever since I've met Nathan, he's just been such a bright light, and he's so kind. And when people ask me, like, oh, what's Nathan like he's a real good deer hunter, but he's even a better person.
Yeah, definitely. Him and his family, I mean, his daughter just had surgery. She'd fell off a horse and broke her wrist, and he texted me and is like, yeah, I'm here. Y'all, or he texted, we've got a group, me and Ethan and Nathan and Dalton, just a group text where he's like, hey, pray for her. And, she's having surgery right now. And I was like, where's she's having surgery? And he said, there at the Bristol Surgical Center. I was like, okay, prayer sent. And about 10 minutes, I was sitting there with him, I was like, yeah, I'm going to go. And, but everything went good. But yeah, I love the guy. Like I said, he's a little brother to me, and his wife and daughter, just, they're family. So,
yeah, no, it's pretty cool. And it's nice how, obviously we all love hunting, whitetail hunting in general, but the people you get to meet through the shared and love for it is pretty awesome.
And, it's like me now, I'm getting to be an old fart. And every year people that, I've known for 40 or 50 years, and I'm losing them now and seeing them. And, and a lot of my, people I respect most and all, shoot, they're up in their 80s. And, sooner or later it's going to run out for all of us.
Yeah.
And I'm a whole lot older now than my dad made it, but, it just, I was talking to Ethan Roderick the other night, and I was just sitting out here watching a thunderstorm, and it's just like, to be honest, it just gets a really lonely feeling because, we grew up when all there was stick and string and wood arrows. I remember aluminum or the microflight, but you'd wait to get your outdoor life and hope there'd be a bow hunting article in it. Or, something like it. We had bow and arrow, and then MR brought bow hunter out, but you'd some of these guys, and it just the magic when we didn't have anything. And Nathan and I talked about this, and I just had this conversation. Dang, who was Paul Bruner? I was talking to him, and I was like, I miss the days of ignorance. I really do, because we overthink it so much today, and I think a lot. I don't, and anybody listening, if they try to friend me on Facebook or something like that, don't take it personal. I don't do it. The only reason I had Facebook, they had, I had to have it to get in everything traditional auction. And that's where the Art Young era, Gene Wenzel put that auction on there. And I had to have that to bid to buy that era. And I lived on Facebook watching it, especially that last hour. But me and one other guy were in a nasty little battle for it. But luckily, he had a spot in the road he didn't have connection, and I did. So, but it just I miss the people that didn't have everything that people do today. People ask me a lot, how did you get where you can hunt like you do with the bow, and especially stalking? Because I've shot so many whitetail off the ground, sneaking in on them, even here. And I shot a big 10 here a few years ago. Last day of rifle season, I shot him with my recurve and opening morning, and I knew I'd kill him within the first 10 minutes of the break of light, or I wouldn't have a chance at him cold. But, everybody asks that, and I was like, man, groundhog hunting when I was a kid. Mm-hmm. That was everything. I love groundhog hunting with a bow. And now I still love it, but I don't shoot them so I can hunt them again another day. I'll pick out a leaf beside them. Or, there's a bunch right in back of that building right now that's probably had 50 arrows shot in next to them this summer. Yeah. And, but, doing that, and back then, people hunted still, we ate what we shot, with rabbits or squirrel. That was a big deal. Being a kid, go out and kill squirrels or rabbits, and your mom, that would be your Sunday breakfast, gravy and fried rabbit or squirrel. And the parents made a big deal out of it. Like, you supplied food.
Yep.
And it wasn't that we didn't have food, but that was a big deal. And, I've done that with my son when he's little, catching trout or something, to give him that as a provider.
Yeah.
And, but I miss that, and I miss the people then. I'm like, here a few years ago, I went and, I won't, for the people in this state, say where it was at, but I went up, spent a couple of times going up to a state north of here, good whitetail hunting. And, I went in and I took a little backpack, army blanket, a poncho, and a space blanket. And that's what I, camped and slept with the whole time up there. And just like, the kid, that's all we had. And that's why, learn how to make a little tarp and lean to and sleep under it. And, wool blanket, all you had, and a space blanket was, that was something else when they came out. But just to feel and taste that again, be able to do that. And I miss those days.
Yeah.
So, and I miss the people, and I miss the friends that, have already gone, and cherish the ones I still got here.
Yeah. And as I'm a little bit younger than you are, but every year, especially when we have our deer camp, we have everyone there. My grandfather's there, and my dad, my uncles, and my whole family and friends. And I'll just sit back, and just look at everyone talking at the camp, and hopefully deer out. Oh, I love
chills.
It.
Yeah.
It's
the tradition.
Yeah, and we were talking about Johnny Stewart earlier, but Johnny always puts it in perspective. Every year he says it when we're there. He's like, he's like, we only get so much of this time every year, and then it flies by, and next thing you know, it's here again, which is great to have that, but every year is it's fleeting. It's not something that is going to be around forever, and whether the people, just everything about it, and it's something that I try to really slow down and appreciate during those times.
Yeah. The, I've hunted with the Apache and Sioux, and I love the old cultures, but one of the things, a guy from the Sioux tribe had said to me, and he was talking about how their philosophy toward family and teaching, and he said, if I can tell you something 10 times or 100 times in a year, you probably won't remember it. But if I can make you feel it one time, you'll never forget, because the heart never forgets. And, and I told my wife when her son was born, I was like, burn every second into your heart, because, he'll be gone before you know it. And that's the way, with your hunting camp and your grandfather and your dad. And, my dad, he died in 1987. And, man, it just broke my heart, not that a lot. But after it, because I couldn't call and tell him about the hunt. Mm-hmm. And I remember calling my mom one night, and I'd killed a nice buck, and it was down in Mississippi. And I called her, and she said, tell me about that hunt. I want to hear about it. And, my mom was my best friend, and she knew what was wrong. Yeah. That I didn't have my dad there. So she sat and listened to it. And, I never did tell her I knew what she was doing, but I did. But it just, and a lot of people, when you talk about a hunt or so, outsiders think that, you're sitting and you're bragging or this and that look here, this and that. It's not. You understand it. You understand what it is to kill a buck. And I guarantee, if I start telling you, you telling me, those feelings are still there, and it's sharing, and it's such a magical reverent thing, a hunt, and you miss one. Everybody's missed.
Oh yeah.
And we understand it, but when you're talking about it, you're just sharing it and sharing. And that's the cool thing about a hunting camp. And when the people aren't there that shared the memories with you, that's when you sit on your back porch and you watch a thunderstorm, and you still can think and talk to them about it, even though they're on down the road a little ways.
Yeah, I was at I think it was this summer here. We were up at camp and we were shooting guns, and my grandfather was there and we were looking at photos on the wall, and there was a photo of him and his brothers, and almost all of them are gone now. Mm-hmm. And he was talking about that feeling of like, he's like, I just love that, you kids are taking it on, but he's like, I do miss, sitting around playing cards with everyone and having that, having those memories. But it definitely, I feel, and we were talking about this beforehand about kind of a little bit why that you've come back into to being willing to, do podcasts and being able to help pass along those things, obviously to your son, but to other people as well. Some of those things you've learned and those stories, and being able to pass that stuff on, and the importance of that.
Yeah. The Professional Bow Hunter Society, knowledge through experience. And it's such an awesome organization and awesome people. Some, in my opinion, probably the best hunters alive today. Most of them are, a member there. And most of them are trad hunters. And I have, as like I was telling you earlier, I told my son I probably killed 1,000 big game animals with a compound. And I have nothing in the world against hunting with a compound. And most of my kills with a compound were in trad range even. I still hunted that mentality for the most part, but if I had to reach out and touch one, I could. But, I don't say that, I'm trying to see how to put this. I don't think I'm smarter than anyone or everyone. But I do have a whole lot more experience. I used to hunt 10 months a year, bow hunt, literally, when I was doing the videos and TV show and stuff. And, and I've hunted, Canada to lower Mexico, and, and hunted whitetail everywhere, and elk, and, and where I was so successful, elk hunting, it was a combination of groundhog hunting and turkey hunting. Made me lethal, And then I could throw in the nose of the whitetail on it, and then I'd pick up those things. I was willing to look and see what the elk were doing and why, realize what an elk does, but use those basics. And, it's that same basics as a kid that I developed and learned that, made me successful, whether it was elk, whether it's bear, lion, big whitetail, big mule deer, it didn't matter. I always, and the other thing was, a lot of people never take that first step to try. And, I don't mind if I trip over something, so what, Next time I'll know to look out for that, and I would try it and go after it. And I always went in, with the opinion that once I started after an animal, he's in a whole lot of trouble, I didn't hope I'm going to kill him. It's like, I'm going to kill him. Now, did that happen 10% of the time, 30% of the time? But if I never,
but having that belief in
it. Just knowing that it's, and people, they think it's some impossible thing or this or that, and it's not. It's just being out there. It's like me and you were talking earlier, and I've killed a lot of really big whitetail, but I've killed just a lot. And I'm my favorite, I've got that one in there. He's 200 inches right at, just in a little bit of change. But my favorite deer I've ever killed was about a 65-pound doe. If I had one animal out of everything I've ever killed to say this is my bow hunting memory, it would be a 65-pound doe, the first one I shot after I came back and started hunting again after I was a security contractor. And I still remember his yellow fletching like this, and I remember that yellow fletching turning, and disappearing right in the crease. And there was she was in some leaves, and there were shadows, early morning, but sunlight shining through, and there was a triangle right there, and that bright fletching just stuck right there, yellow fletching sticking out of her that way, and I just remember, I can still see those feathers turning as it hit her. And I sit back, I sit down and I just like, God, thank you, Father, for making me a bow hunter. And just being so appreciative of that. And that and a groundhog I shot when I was 8th grade. And I was wearing a old green wool plaid that was my grandfather's. And sneaking, we lived on a big mountain, and it was in, I call it God's light. You got dark clouds, but the sun peeks in under it at sunset. You get those golds and reds, and they were hitting the big meadow I was in, and it raised up the hill, and the wind was blowing, and man, I was thinking Fred Bear on a grizzly hunt. And I was shooting a 70-inch recurve, a Steiner that was my dad's, an arrow exactly like this one. They were my favorite arrows. That's why I still to this day make them the cresting, everything's the same, bear razor head. But this groundhog stood up and he was 70, 80 yards from me, stood up in that light, and it was Fred Bear and a grizzly, Like I said, I think I was in 8th grade, and I remember drawing back and releasing that arrow and just watching it, bright yellow in the sunlight, and just center punch that thing. And seriously, it was 70, 80 yard shot,
Wow.
But when I drew back, there was not one speck of doubt that I was going to hit that thing. Now, I didn't shoot like that. I was good out 20, 25 yards, 30 yards, but I'll just, to this day, I can still, and out of everything I've killed, that's my 2 best bow hunting memories. Those 2 are the bow hunter I dream of being.
Those ones were the ones that were burned into the heart there.
Oh God, yeah. I can smell, I can taste, the air on both of them. When I start thinking about it, I was just thinking about that. I can taste the air. I can feel the dryness of the wind on that other hunt talking about it.
Yeah.
But it's been over the years. Like I said, I don't care if it's elk, whitetail, whatever. It's there's been a lot of hunts like that just, and then the friends along the way. My goodness, some of them, and it's just, I've really been blessed with it, especially when I was in the industry and doing the filming and stuff. That was ups and downs, and I remember I was actually hunting on some of the Hickory Apaches land in New Mexico, elk hunting, but it was so expensive. We had several crews out, and I remember talking to the guy that was the kind of the boss. Well, he was the boss then, and he was talking about, he's like, we got still with these hunts, we've still got $25,000 invested in this. And I caught in this, it was an old bull, and I was hunting with, he's Apache, Fred Lasario. And Fred, if you hear it, God bless you, my friend. But Fred was in back of me calling. I was cow calling up front, and this bull screaming coming through the oak brush. And he stepped out and you're hoping for a 350 bull, but I look at him and he's like, 300 class. So, but he's short and just short time, but just super mass. I mean, he's like this out. And when I saw that mass on the beams, I'm like, man, that thing's as old as he sounds.
Yeah.
And drawing back and, and when I hit anchor, the thought went through my head, there's $25,000 riding on this shot. Make it count. And I shot him, and he just went a little bit. I took top of his heart off, and he went down, and we found him. And I walked down to there, and I remember, in my own silent little thing to him, I'm sorry for the disrespect, letting that thought in for that moment. And, and at that time I was like, yeah, I'm almost done with this. And 9/11 happened and other stuff. And it was like, yeah, it was. And I got asked to come back and start a TV show and stuff. It's like, no, I want left alone, and I just want to hunt, hunt. And when I left, I picked up, I didn't shoot a compound again. I picked my trad bow back up because I'd always take my trad bows with me.
Yep.
But, I needed to, if you're making a TV show or you're making a video, you gotta be able to kill.
Yeah.
I mean, and the compound, I don't want that. I don't have to have that 10-yard shot, that 5-yard shot. I can do it at 50,
Yep.
the compound then. And it was funny. I hadn't shot a compound. I'd shot one time in, 25 years, probably 30 years. I don't know. And Gabe just started shooting one, and I picked my old bow up. I still had it, and I tried to talk to him and said, man, shoot this thing. It'll do whatever you need. So I want a new bow. So we got him one. But we walked back out here at 60, and I hadn't shot one, and I put 2 arrows space about that big at 60 with it. And he looked at me, he said, when was the last time? And I was like, maybe old, but I still got it.
Yeah.
But I picked the trad bow up and then started building my own bows, self bows and stuff. And it's not that I think that trad hunters are any better or that's the way it should be done, this or that. If it's legal and you're doing it, I've got, and I won't get into it, my opinion on certain weapons that shouldn't be in bow season, but I'm fine with it. I have no problem with it, and it's not, and the reason I do, it's not that I think it's bad, it's just what makes me happy. It's fun, especially the stuff like I was showing myself bows that I build myself.
Oh, they're so cool. When you were showing me them in your room in there, and seeing them, and you let me
from a fence post.
Yeah, from a fence post, and with the snake skin on it, and was it elk sinew?
Elk sinew on that one. The other one's got buffalo, and I've got in there in the freezer right now. A friend of mine, they killed a lion, and I was like, man, I want to build a bow with lion sinew, and so I've got lion sinew. I'm going to do one with lion, mountain lion. Because lion hunting is probably, I don't know, man. If I lived out west, I don't know if I'd be doing more elk or more lion. I love lion hunting. I love mountain lions. I don't care if I shoot one or not, but just hunting the thing. I get more kick out of cutting a lion track than I do killing an 8-point buck. I just absolutely love it.
It's funny. I was just talking about that this morning. I was with my buddy Josh in West Virginia, and he's been out west. He has dogs, and he takes them out there. And he's like, "We should go this winter and go do it." And I was like, it's funny. That's something that I've really wanted to do. There's something for me. I don't know why, but ever since I was a kid, I've been fascinated by mountain lions.
Oh, they're
I'm slightly afraid of them. I am fascinated by them. I see what a house cat can do.
Yeah.
And I'm like, these things are just the ultimate predator.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And, and talking with biologists that American cougar, the mountain lion, pound for pound, is the strongest of all the big cats. Now, technically, they're not listed as a big cat because they can't roar. They meow. Now, they'll snarl at you and growl at you, but they don't do like a roar, like, you know, you'll hear a tiger, lion, jaguar, leopard. They don't do that. They make a meow sound. I've heard them do that. And but the strength on these things, I actually knew a guy that trapped them and relocated them, and got to spend some time with them. And I actually tried, me and him and this guy, then I worked out 4 to 6 hours a day average, and I was fighting then. And I mean, I was, you know, rock climber and all. I was in shape. You know, you want to run 20 miles? Let's go. Yeah. And, you know, I mean, extreme shape. I was about 200 pounds, probably 190, 200. He was a whole lot bigger than me, and he'd been an athlete. And we got a leg snare on one in a live trap, trying to dart it. And this thing threw us around, and it wasn't a big lion. I mean, it ragdoll, manhandled, jerked both of us off our feet, you know, just like, you know. And I'm like, yeah, that's a new respect for it. But, you know, you hear about the attacks and stuff. That's bad management. You know, most of that where they not allowing any hunting, any human threat. Mm-hmm. It's like with the grizzlies, same thing. I was talking to Rosie Roseland the other night, and he was talking about, like, if Alaska's bears were, you know, as aggressive as Wyoming, Montana, where they can hunt them, there'd be 300 people a year dying up there. But they know that humans a threat. You respect them. Mm-hmm. And, you know, and so, but that's a whole nother thing. But same thing with the lion. But, yeah, they're incredible. I got one time, I did this several times, but I spent one. I got on a lion track and just followed it through the snow for miles and miles. Came out completely on the other side of a mountain range. You know, tracking it, tracked it, and it was so cool, the interaction, how they hunted. I learned a lot about how they hunted. I learned a lot about mule deer hunting by watching how the lion hunted.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, who's better at hunting them?
Yeah.
You know, they hunt, you know, as a trad hunter, I hunt mountain lion close.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I have to do.
Yeah.
And so, you know, it was just watching the way they hunted and looking at where the mule deer tracks were, thinking about winds, thermals. You know, I was thinking about this stuff, places they would sit and watch for bushwhacking one, and they would have a constant wind, the lion would. It would take advantage of a constant wind, but where the deer were feeding up within range of them. Exactly the same as we do, but that lion was doing the same thing. Or saddles, you'd find them set up in saddles where they'd lay down and lay around saddles and stuff. So, you know, you know, just being observant enough to realize and stop and think, why did he do this, or why did he circle all at once here and then go down and look, see if there are deer tracks in the area. If he was smelling them, you know, you realize that there were times that you don't think about cat using his nose, but they do. They really, really do a lot. Mm-hmm. So, you know, that was, like I said, that, you know, trad hunter has to be lying close. So, you know, who's the best hunter? Let's just do like him, let him mentor us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you learned a lot of that from when you were lion hunting and watching how their tracks and following the tracks. Is that how you learned a lot of that?
Well, I would go, like, there was a couple areas I got in that I would just go in the snow and find a set of lion tracks and go. No dogs or anything. Mm-hmm. And just go and follow the tracks and see where they went anytime I could.
Yeah.
And so I got to do that 4 different times. And but, you know, each time wide open eyes and brain, just try asking why.
Yeah.
And that we were talking about earlier about, like, right now, why I came back where it started out writing the magazine articles for Traditional Bowhunter and Bowhunter and PBS publication, but doing those was to start giving back a little bit of the knowledge. And, Barry Wenzel and I talked about this, and Aaron Miller, that back before I started doing anything, Barry said that. I was telling you earlier, and that's why he started doing the seminars and the books and the videos series that he came out, the DVD series. Mm-hmm. He's come out, he's like, we die, this stuff dies with us. There's stuff that we're doing that very few people do and nobody talks about. And for hunting, to be successful or in the future, there has to be an interest. And it's not people getting burnt out. And there's just so many corn piles or food plots that people can hunt over. Most people don't have that opportunity, with state land or this and that. Where if they could learn the basics of woodsmanship, they're going to very quickly become their own best teacher. If that makes sense, because I can have the, show, if you and I are shown the same basics, and we start utilizing them in our hunts, well, my path may diverge off to where become, I hunt small or out of the way little strips, where nobody else thinks about deer being. You might become off that same basics, but use it to become a scrape hunter. Someone else may a food source hunter there. Well, all of us may be able, and I talk about this a lot on the podcast. Like, you put me, Aaron, Nathan, Gene, Barry, Wenzel, Ethan, we put all of us in one big woodlot to kill a buck. And each of us may kill that same buck a different way. Now there's a couple of people that will end up in the same stinking tree I am.
Yeah.
Nathan Killen.
Yeah.
I talked about this not long ago. Nathan went up scouting an area north of here, and he sent me a bunch of the maps and pins he had laid. And I looked at one of them, and I'm like, I called him up. I said, that blah, 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 blah. Did you by chance find an axe there in a tree somewhere or see some bones? He's like, no. I said, did you really look around much? Up or down from there? And he's like, right back and back of it. He goes, no, I really didn't, because it would be almost impossible to kill him there. But it's an awesome spot, awesome scrape. And I go, that's where I killed Crook. And he's like, why? I said, that's exactly where I said, first time me and Aaron were going up there to hunt, I told Aaron, this is my number one spot to look. But I asked him, I said, so how would you hunt that? And he goes, you can't. I go, and that's why the buck's there. I said, it's the same thing. I had to kill him on the other side from there, but he died right there, and I left my axe in the tree there. And but you're looking at 100,000 acres plus,
yeah.
And he was the exact, how many
years ago was that you shot Crook?
4 years ago, maybe.
Okay.
5 years. Yeah.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. And it was like, and it's just like, but that when he did that, you know what it did? It like validated a little bit of my whitetail skill that Nathan Killen found the same spot. And what's funny about it, Jason at Timber Ninja, me and him were talking one day. He started talking about hunting this area, and I was like, really, where you hunting? He told me, and I said, where? And it was like same drainage, and in there, and I think I told him, I was like, I need to tell you where there's a little hidden bench in there that you need to go look at, because it's the best scrape, but it's where Crook was bedding, where I first saw him. And the first time I'm in there and we're in this area, I went up to it. I found this, anyway, the area had been cut and it had grown up, 4 or 5 years, stuff. And I found this faint trail. And when I looked at it, I was like, okay. And I'd seen the track in there, and it just following it up. And I almost killed him off the ground because I smelled him right before I stepped up on this little bench, and it's like half size of my backyard, but about as long. But
yeah,
just stuck in a little nook, and I've looked like on Spartan Forge and Onyx, and I can't see it on them really. But when you walk up on it, you're like, holy cow!
Yeah,
the scrapes, and I've never seen a scrape like that in my life either, and he's bedded right at it, and but I smelled him, and I knocked in there, and I crept over the edge, and I saw a big rump going up the bluff, and it was like, okay. And so I let him, and he went around, and I just stepped up on there to look at it, and like, okay, out. I know now I got to figure out how to kill him here. It took 3 years before I got a wind that was right that I could hunt it.
So yeah, explain a little bit back when you were saying about the spot that it was unhuntable, like you couldn't hunt it. What made it unhuntable? The wind?
Yeah, every advantage was his. Sound, and here's another thing, like people, they look at a whitetail and they're so concentrated on the nose. But stop and remember, first line of defense is the eyes. Second is the ears. Third is the nose. Now, importance on that may go just opposite, because the deer utilize them just opposite. I fully believe 95% of the hunts are over before a guy ever starts. And the reason being is because when I say start, that gets to the tree, okay? Because, they're so lackadaisical about access. They're so lackadaisical about studying the wind. They study the wind where they're hunting, but they don't study the wind from the time they get out of their vehicle to that stand.
Mm-hmm.
To that stand. And I've said this over and over and over, and I said it in the very first podcast I did with Ethan. If you hunt a spot somewhere and hear deer blowing at you a quarter mile away, or blowing, or a half mile even, or 2 ridges over, and you're sitting there thinking, wonder what's over there spooking them. And you're in a stand, and another morning they get spooked. Guess what? You're sitting at the wrong spot. You need to be over where those deer are snorting from, because I've watched this over and over, and like areas I hunt now are a lot rolling hills, wood lots, bigger hills. I want big ridges, but some places I can see 1.5 miles across and see everything between us, all the drainages, the brush lines, the fence lines, the little wood lots, the briar patches, the grown-up pasture, the low ground that comes through open fields, the high ground in fields, and watch these deer. And instead, if they got to go from a cornfield at point A and they're going to be bedding over here, at this one at point D, in this area, and I know that's where they bed, instead of coming down, and even though there's brush and stuff they can go, They may go down a quarter mile, half mile out of their way. And then next time you see them, they're standing up on high ground halfway to you, down a half mile below or quarter mile below. And then they drop back down, and then they're straight out this way, and they come up a little drainage. And you got to stop and think, what are they doing that for? And what they're doing, they're moving, taking advantage of the wind and learning, like, okay, over here, to find out where I'm wanting to go, and not the bedding area, but my travel route. To get right here on my travel route, I need to go down here. I've got good open field down here. I can use my eyes all the way down. Nothing's down there. I can cross that real quick, get to there. I got thermals dropping all the way down the creek bottom. I can see if anything's in that creek bottom there. I'll move up to here to where now I've got predominant wind coming across, and I can use it to where I got to get to point C. And then they'll go, okay, point C, when I get to there, that's the bottom of the turkey foot, the hub, the thermal hub right there that I've got dropping thermals still in, and I can move right up to where I want to bed. So they move, people just think about right here where I'm going to put thermal hub. I'm going to get there. It's a great spot. Well, he's got to get to that thermal hub before he moves up. So where's he's going to wind his trail? And your older does in particular, you can watch them like zigzag patterns a lot of times doing that. And if you really stop and you go to those spots and look, or like one of the worst things in the world that Eastern hunters do, they don't use their binoculars. They don't use their binoculars. So that deer's sitting over here 200 yards from me, and what's he doing? Well, I don't know. What's the wind doing? Well, watch the grass, watch the foxtails, watch the leaves fall. See if that's different than where you're at now or where he's going, and learn it. And I've talked about this over and over the years. It's like one of the best examples I can give on using binoculars. We were on an elk hunt. Game warden buddy of mine that hunted with me. I was tagged out. I was calling for him. We had bedded a big herd, and it was on a little low mesa. We moved up across the flats. It was getting close to sunset. Waited, sun was down, elk bugling, screaming up on the ridge. And he's like, man, we got to go. It's getting dark. And I'm like, stay. And I mean, he was ticked off. It was almost coming to punches. I was like, shut up. Just sit here, buddy. We'll be good. And anyway, we sit there, and I'm glassing. I was like, come on, we got to go. We take off. We get up there. I set him up. I make one call. Bull bugles a little bit. I was like, he's going to come to me. And I move around back of him. The other side, I made two other calls. Thump! I hear the arrow hit it. And he's hopping up and down. He goes, nah, 6 point. Josh is jumping up and down. And he's like, man, I just shot him. He's like, point blank. He goes, when you moved, you drew him right by me. He's like, why in the blah, blah, blah did we wait? That I said, because we'd have blown everything off the mountain. He's like, why? I said, I'm sitting there at a distance, and what I was doing is watching the aspen leaves. When the flats, we were still getting predominant wind blowing up and the thermals off them, and I'm seeing these aspen leaves still going up or blowing outside the ridge. When I saw them start coming down the ridge consistent, I knew the thermals were dropping, and that's when we moved in where we could have that split second to get on them. And, you know, like I said, it was I'm telling you, it probably wasn't 2 minutes setup and we'd killed the bull. You know, and we were able to get within that 70 to 80 yards of him in that dark timber.
Yep.
And just, you know, and
because otherwise, if you would have went at the beginning, he would have known you were coming from
the whole herd. And then we're starting with elk. They leave the country.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, and we're taking care, and we ended up killing other bulls out of this herd. They never knew what happened. Mm-hmm. We'd let them. We didn't go after that bull for a while. We let the elk feed down, get doing their stuff, and, you know, carousing and stuff in the bottoms. We went in and got the bull, and we went around, so we didn't track up the area real bad. Mm-hmm. Instead of just one person smelling them come across, you know, And we didn't do the whole thing running around. We were smart about it. In fact, I don't remember if I was the one actually tracked the bull. I don't remember. But anyway, that's what we did. We were smart and we took care of the area. Well, my whole point is, like, with the binoculars, you can learn so much. And that's the thing as a whitetail hunter, you have to be open-minded and open your eyes. You'll never figure out a whitetail, what he's doing, everything he's doing, why. Now, maybe if I had, 2,000-3,000 acres and 50 trail cams out, and I could set in feeders and watch and say, this and that, I could have a pretty good idea of what he was doing and why 50% of the time. But what makes me so strong, Adam, I will find one or two weaknesses in what he's doing, and I'll exploit them. And a lot of those, you have to do that. You may just have 1 or 2 days. Example, if I can tell there's a hot doe in the area, I've got very short time to take advantage of that. Where am I going to go? How am I going? Where's the chance of that, getting where does or other bucks are going to be coming through there looking for her. Mm-hmm. And so when I'm doing that, I've got to decide what type of deer am I hunting. I call homeboys that there's a lot, especially your older, smarter bucks or high-pressured bucks, they move into a little pocket and they let the does come to them for the most part. I mean, they branch out a little bit, but they stay there in that little core sanctuary. Now, these bucks may have 4 or 5 pods of does that they're checking, but they will do that. They will move into that one area, and they will stay there. They can tell if a doe's coming in a week. And a lot of times, they'll all come in pretty close together. So there'll be that little small core area that they've been pushed into, and that's where they stay. I call them homeboys. They've got that one core spot they'll stay. And like I said, he may have 4 or 5 core areas, but he's there now. Then you've got your rovers, and that's your bucks that just hit. They're walkers. Mm-hmm. They're just walking and looking. So you have to decide, am I hunting a specific deer in this core area? Or am I hunting, trying to intercept the rovers, the walkers? Mm-hmm. And where the best of both worlds is where you can find, but there's places they intersect. And so you get both. The walkers are coming through. They're going to use the same, I guess, topographical features, and topographical includes man-made, yep, or whatever. And so which one of those to zero in on at that point?
Well, and not to interrupt you, but just to give an example, you're talking about those home-bodied bucks that sit there. There was a deer that my dad ended up shooting a few years back. This is his biggest deer, 170 inches, and he spent years trying to find this deer. He'd get pictures of him in the summer. And then he's like, I went everywhere, and he ended up finding this one small pocket that he lived in, and he hunted them for like 21 straight days. He had 2 encounters on the ground, and then ended up shooting them out of the tree November 14th. But from before the rut through the rut, that deer, I mean, I'm sure he left at some point, but every time he was running into him was in the same small area. Yeah. And where typically, or not, I shouldn't say typically, but a lot of times you see bucks that it's like the rut comes and they're gone, and they're the rovers. The rovers, yeah.
And sometimes your older bucks will be the ones that go in that way. Now me, like here, I told you our area buck make it past 2.5. Mm-hmm. It's pretty rare. And if he gets through 3.5, there's a real high probability he's going to die of old age, because we have these little woodlots and they learn what works for them. Each deer's got a different personality, has a little trick up his sleeve that works for him. Your hope is that a doe drags him out, or he gets complacent, with where he's at, feeling safe. And like with your dad, I will bet he didn't penetrate in on the buck. He hunted the very edge with a good access.
Mm-hmm.
And again, that goes back to what I was talking about. 95% of the hunts are blown beforehand because traveling, you have to your stand, you have to think, where is my scent going to and what residual scent am I laying on the ground? I don't want that buck to ever know I'm in that area. So how do I get into there where my scent's not blowing to him? He can't see me. He can't hear me. He can't smell me. How of that, or how he's not going to find my scent at night. So, the residual scent that I've left. So, that is so important. But here's where a lot of people really blow it, and this gets into your thermals. You may go in the morning and you've got a drop in thermal that keeps you safe. You come out at noon, you have rising thermals. Well, where is that deer now bedded? If you walk down the same trail, your scent may be going right to him. So you may have to take a complete different way out to get into him. And then in the evening, if you go in when it's still hot and rising thermals, you're going to go in that way and exit what your access was in the morning. There's a lot of and people never think they walk the same trail.
Yep.
And,
and thinking you're doing the right thing from minimizing ground scent of walking on the same spot.
And the other thing is too, you and I were talking earlier, and you can talk to an HVAC guy or somebody who really knows what they're talking about, especially industrial, because I worked in the nuclear industry for a long time, nuclear security. So everything to do with ductwork and that had to be approved by me. Mm-hmm. And so I'd sit and talk to these guys about, but you actually have laminated air layers even in HVAC, different thermal layers, different ways that it moves inside of ductwork, that it, where restrictions are, where bends are, and it can actually move in different directions in there. Well, thermals in the woods, you and I were talking about this earlier, they can do the same thing. You can have a prevailing wind hitting you in the face on the side of a ridge, and you're like, man, I got this. That wind's blowing in and blowing up over the top of this saddle, and, buck walks right in underneath you 20 yards, and, he freezes up. And it's like, and everybody's like, man, he just knew I was there, 6 cents, bull. What it is, if you're in the shadow or you're in a low area, at the ground level, you will have a dropping thermal on that, especially if it's shade, and it'll slide right underneath. Your wind can be here and this thermal can be in there. And I was telling you about that mountain buck class we did down with Timber Ninja, and Johnny was there, and that was like, I could not have asked a better example to have shown those guys. We went in on there was a knob, excuse the way, maybe the camera can see it here, basically like this, and it curved in here. And it was before I knew I had cancer already. I hadn't told those guys I was pretty sick, and we started up the mountain, and I'll just be honest, a quarter mile up, I was like, if I go any further, I'm going to have a heart attack. I can't do this. I was just out of gas. Mm-hmm. Ethan walked back down to check on me. He realized something wasn't right. Well, the other guys come back down, and I said, no, you guys go on. I'll just work my way slow. And they go, no, we'll just hang with you. And they started asking me questions. I said, really? And Nathan was with us. Nathan went, of course, all the way top of the mountain. With his group, and I said, guys, I would started scouting at the bottom, and I would scout up. I don't scout from the top and all the way down. I said, I start seeing this is just what I do. And I said, I would really start right where this thing made a bend like this. There's a logging road went out it. This was all shaded in pines, and there was a road went out along this knob like this. Mm-hmm. We walked out there right where that thing made that bend. Wind was hitting us in the back of the head. We were walking with the wind right there, and it was a strong wind. I said, I want to show you guys something. And we were almost at the end of the knob, and there was a little saddle right above us like this, and we were down probably 20 yards under it. And I picked up pine leaves, and I dropped them at our level and right straight out the ridge, like the wind hitting in the head. And I said, watch this. At the ground level, there was that drainage that went right down in the curve and right down that drainage. And they're like, what? And I said, watch this. Right down the drainage. I said, come up 3 feet out the ridge, back down a foot off the ground, 6 inches off the ground, down. And what that is, it's just that drainage is colder. The ground is colder. The air's going to be colder, and if it's heavier, it's going to roll downhill. It's going downhill. So you had a wind blowing this way, and you have it coming down off the top going this way. Well, the thing is that I told them what that does, anytime there's a vacuum, there's a displacement, it has to suck air in from it somewhere. So if it's going this way, it's sucking air from the top. Well, it's sucking air out of the top of that layer too. So a buck down below there can be down here, and he can smell everything out the side of this ridge that the predominant wind's coming, because some of it faintly is getting pushed down, pulled in that thermal and downhill. So he's covering everything over here, and there's a chance he's even over the top getting some. Well, what was cool about that, when we walked around this way, it dipped down just a little like this, and then a big side of a mountain with its been logs. Sun hitting it hotter than heck over there. The wind is blowing this way on that side. This way, it's blowing up the mountain where the sun's hitting it. Extreme rising thermal the sunlight hitting it, so it's pulling it up. So all this air is getting sucked up the mountain. What's it doing? It's going around the end of that knob that we walked in this way. Well, part of that is getting pulled, sucked into that rising air. Some of it's doing that. So some of this air is going all the way back up here. Well, when it got all the way out here where we originally walked in was the end of that little knob, and there's a saddle right there. You could go there, and the wind was doing this. It was circling back. So the wind that had been hitting us in the face so hard was because it was getting sucked up here. It was doing a 360, and that's what I told him. That's the kind of places like Nathan talks about, deer bed on those little knobs like that. And we looked for a bed, but there was no beds right there, but a massive signpost rub. But that thermal interaction right there was doing a 360. And that's why bucks bed places like that, because they know. And another thing I feel 100% saying, if they get something in a 360 this way, they can tell the difference off the air that they're smelling off the clear cut versus out in that pine thicket coming in behind them. I really think they can, their noses are good enough, they know that. And so, that's one of those places impossible to hunt.
Yeah.
I mean, he's got every advantage. And going back to what I was saying before, that how a deer will move point A, point B, point C to point D, he will move, especially the older, more cautious deer, they will move that way, checking their trail that they're going to be following. They will be scent checking it. They don't just scent check. I call them destination spots. You know how they'll J-hook around in a scrape or something? Well, they J-hook. Everybody thinks destination points where they're going to feed, where they're going to bed, where they're going to breed. Well, there's a bunch of destination points. I've got to make it to here, And if you've ever had anybody chasing you with a gun or they know they're in the area, you don't walk straight down the road. You're going to be moving from point A, moving cover to cover to cover. And we're going to be using our eyes. We're going to be looking for that. Well, they've got the nose. The nose is for long range scent assessment. And that's what it is. And so they don't use it just to get to that destination point. They use it even on the trails. Your bigger, smarter bucks, bigger, older does are the worst in the world. They'll drive you stupid. But they use that, and they do it all the time. It's like there's places that I don't care you go into, and like, old Mama Doe, she's got me. And anywhere I go, she always finds me because she knows where to go. She doesn't know you're in there. She just knows how to check.
Yeah.
And I don't know, what time is it right now?
5:30.
Okay. Because if we get time, I'm going to take and show you a spot that it'll amaze you when you see what this is. I showed this to Gabe a few years ago. We were hunting, and we were hunting a really nice buck. We knew he's bedding over here in this big thicket. Nobody can hunt it. You can't get into it, but we know that's where he's bedding. We'd seen the buck too many times, watch him in and out, and we know he's going a mile and a half over to some cornfields that at night he's been seen over in there and crossing the road. And we would see him, tonight he might cross over here, this, that, being in the wind. But this buck, there's a 90-degree fence line that comes into the bottoms. And this buck is bedding down the drainage that comes down one of the backside of the fence line off the 90. He would travel with thermal in his nose in the evenings up to that one spot, and it came into a big bowl. And big ridge from this side dumped over. You'd have a northwest wind, more west-northwest this particular night. It was dumping over. So we were sitting down. He was rifle hunting, but we were sitting back far enough that our wind was just missing his bed. We were just off of it. We were hoping he would come up and follow the fence line up and cross. And instead, he come to there, and up on top of the hill, massive, or a big 40-acre woodlot in there. And a lot of does and stuff up at the top, but hunting pressure up there. And we had, against the upper ridge, we had fence line up there. We had stands up there. Well, this buck comes up the drainage, hits the corner of this lower fence, and then goes diagonal across the big bowl up to the corner and stopped. And when he got to the corner, he eased up behind some brush, and he stood there for a long time right at the edge, because the other side of that ridge was big fields. Mm-hmm. Now, he had a nose wind for a lot of that, but what that buck was ending up doing, he was coming with a nose wind and a side wind. He's getting the predominant coming across. Thermal's coming down, so he is covering everything on this side, the way he's moving, predominant wind, and everything in front of him with the thermal. So where all the does and stuff was, he diagonaled, and he's 300 yards probably off of this woodlot, and he diagonaled up to the far corner of that woodlot in that bowl. He's getting that thermal off that woodlot. So he's scent checking that whole woodlot and all those thickets doing that diagonal across. He gets to the top, he stops, he's still getting a nose wind, which he will dump off, and I know the thicket he was going into then. But he's using that, but he stops at the top and he watches for 15 minutes, stands there, and he'd move up a little. And he's sitting there with his eyes, everything that he can't smell on that big open meadows. He's watching here, he's watching houses down here, he's watching. And then he dumps off and goes across at a low spot in the field. There's a little, goes off, and he goes right down at two little points that connect, point to point.
Yep.
And goes off and down. But I was like, Gabe, do you realize? And we sat, me and him, we hunted that 2 or 3 more nights. And right there, and we would talk about that every night about what he was doing. Because what a lesson to give an 11-year-old.
Oh, yeah.
You know, to actually see a buck doing that. He'd move up where he'd use his eyes, use his nose, and move. And where he was vulnerable, he would be moving at a high rate of speed. Where he had a good nose, you could just see it in him, the confidence in him.
Yeah, and that gives more examples of what you're talking about, of not just a point A to point B, where he had a point A to point B to point C to point D as he was moving up and cutting across that bowl, hitting that corner and using those different senses at different times. When one's blocked, going to the next thing.
So when you find something like that, how do you kill a buck like that?
I was going to ask one. I need to check on this one camera just to make sure everything's good, but I can't see that one. Yeah, we're good. Okay. Yeah. I was just going to ask you about that, because you've given these situations of like, how do you kill a buck like that?
So on a buck like that, his greatest weakness is his point of most confidence. His greatest strength can be his greatest weakness, and where you take advantage of him. I kamikaze hunt. And you've seen just a few of the racks here, and then like the ones out here for this area, that's a 170 in Ohio. I mean, we just don't, getting 140, 150 inch deer here is hard. Every one of those deer I killed at the last second, where he had a nose wind, he was going to bust me. Just seconds before he busted me. And I talk about, I hunt parallel winds. A lot of times, if this is the wind direction and the buck is traveling this way, I'm sitting right here. My scent is blowing in a position that is going to cut his trail. So, and that's what we were talking earlier, this thread, and this thread actually got cut. They're usually about this long, but
yeah. So for anybody that's not watching the video version, Allan has a piece of, is that like serving material for for bowstring or anything? Or?
It's out of my wife's sewing kit.
Okay.
I use white thread because it shows up better than the rest for me in low light. It's just I tie, every one of my arrows will have a 6-inch piece of thread off it, okay, off the end of the arrow. And what that advantage, and for me, I'm watching, when I'm out here, I'm watching what the wind is doing. It does two things when, that arrow is stuck out there. First of all, think about your body on a 30-degree day or a 10-degree day. You're 98 degrees. The scent coming off of you is rising. Now, what it's going to do, if it's a dead calm day, it'll rise till it hits ambient temperature. It cools off, then it'll mushroom out. If it's a dead calm day, your scent will go up. The moisture in it will be heavier, and so it's going to mushroom out and fall to the ground. Dead calm day, if you don't have the side of a hill, if it's level, if you're in a bottom, it's going to mushroom out and build, a scent perimeter around you. The longer you're there, the longer it's going. I've set places like in a low bowl that by 9, 10 in the morning, a deer 100 yards away in any direction will smell me. That scent just filtered. It floods out. And a good thing you can do, take a cup of, and set it up, a foot off a table of water and drop a piece of dry ice in it and just watch that air boil up, come down, and watch what it does on the level surface. It's exactly what your scent is going to do, only it'll rise higher because of your body temperature. Mm-hmm. But anyway, my whole point to that, and getting off on a tangent, this arrow at the length, now I'm monkey arm, so I've got this arrow shaft's probably 34 inches altogether. It's a 32-inch shaft, old bear razor head, and big knock on it, wood arrow. But when it's out here this way, it's a good 3 feet or better from my body. At knock, or when I hit anchor point, I'm 30 inches. But out here, it's 40 inches probably from my body or better.
Yep.
Like where I'm holding my bow, ready to shoot, ready to draw it, maybe further. That thread is outside of the heat vortex of my body. So that gives me a realistic idea of what the wind's doing. Now, if it's a predominant wind wrapping around the tree, it still may play, but that gives me, an idea. So a lot of times where I hunt, I will hunt if I'm going to shoot him, I have to shoot him 30 degrees off before he's dead even with me, because dead even with me, my scent cone, he's going to get it. Mm-hmm. So my scent is going to blow across the way he's walking, and I know that. But what I'm looking at is where that deer is going to be walking, feeling 100% confident, coming in with a nose wind, and when he's got the nose wind, he's not looking in my direction. He's looking to his weak side that he can't. So it takes his eyes off. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no.
What I was talking earlier,
yep.
Eyes, ears, nose. So he's where he needs to be using his eyes, his focus will be a little bit more off, looking that direction. Now, he may be looking past me on, under the tree, looking down the hill under me, but he's using his point of focus is in a different area. So I'm killing him right before he wins me. Now, if I don't make it happen, I won't get another opportunity there at him, probably
because you're going to scare him
2 weeks or to a month before he comes back through there. So, but everybody goes, well, man, you're going to blow your area. Well, here's how I look at it. If I hunt pure safety for me, okay, if I hunt that and it's not good for him, he's probably not going to be there. All right? So I would rather get the opportunity. Mm-hmm. And the best way for me to get the opportunity is to give him everything he wants. Let him be 100% feeling safe that I'm using my nose, I'm using my eyes, I'm using my ears, I've been here before, this has worked for me, I'm good. So there's some degree of complacency there with him. And I get the opportunities. I will get more opportunities than a guy that hunts, hunting safe. How many times have you heard people talk about killing deer and they say, man, the wind was, wrong for me, or, it was almost wrong.
Yeah, a lot.
And that's but I do that on purpose.
Yep.
I do that on purpose. And does it work every time? No, I get busted. And, and sometimes they don't fall. Crook, when I killed him, I just thought about this. He came opposite direction. I had the the bench was up above me, and I thought he would come down going into the bottom, but he came around the other side of the ridge. He came in opposite what I thought, I just now thought about it. He came in with the nose wind going to that scrape. Mm-hmm. It's what he was doing with the drop in thermal that day. And the only way I could kill him where he was at, have a dead calm day, and just thermals completely dominating everything. And so that was the only way. And I only had that happen one time in 3 years, probably 20, 25 days hunting in there, that I could do that.
That you could get to that spot.
I could, And the day I did, and he had everything to his advantage. It was a place I knew he had walked, and but he had every advantage. And so that's, that's one of the big ways that I gain these opportunities. And and I've just got to, I don't have to have his whole puzzle. I just have to have that little piece, like I know. And a lot of times I'll get into an area and I'll figure it out as I go. Mm-hmm. Like I may be in stand today, and then I see that buck do something, and it's like, why'd he do that? And I try to figure out why'd he do that. But I remember the exact conditions that he did this on. Or why didn't I see him today? He should have been here. Why didn't I? And another thing, let's go back to point A, point B, point C, point D. The bad thing is if you screw him up at point B, he's not going to be at point C. He may not go to point D, so you're going to throw his whole pattern off. Mm-hmm. But when that happens, sometimes you can go back to, and it depends what point A was.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can go back to point A and catch him right there later on the same day.
Because he was still confident in that, getting to that spot.
Yeah, and he'll get back to it because that is his comfortable spot. Mm-hmm. And so let me throw that in there. But no, another thing with it is that like giving them every advantage, they don't have a 100% advantage all the time. Barry Wenzel said, we were talking one time, he's like, man, if a deer walked with a nose wind, he'd be in the Pacific Ocean if he did it 100% of the time. That's true. So a lot of times they'll have, a butt wind to them, and you'll look like, why in the world is he doing that? And stop and think about, well, he's got no other choice, or he's super confident in that. He thinks he sees everything there. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. They live by their nose 100% of the time, but they probably only get an advantage with the nose. I would say 30 to 40% of the time, if that.
Yep. Especially
in the mountains. And so, you stop and think, a buck dropping into a thermal hub in the evening. There's till he hits the bottom, and if he starts back up the other side, if he's going to go high, then he starts picking it up. But if he's going to come on down into the creek bottom, the only place he's got the advantage is on up the creek bottom. He'll come down with a butt wind half the time. Mm-hmm. But he's been up there all day, and he feels secure because he's headed in.
Yep.
And it was funny. I was talking to Jason and Andrew the other day. I brought this up. There's videos that, if you can ever find one, 40 years ago, that I'm talking about hubs and thermal hubs. The first, I think I coined that phrase, actually,
really?
Thermal hub, because I was the first whitetail hunter I ever heard actually talking about thermals on a video. Now, the good ones, Roger Rothar.
Yeah.
These guys knew it. They knew what the thermal, the dropping winds or whatever they called it. But I was first calling, and I picked that up mule deer hunting, stalking and stuff, the thermals and this, but then thermal hub. But just taking advantage of that stuff. But another thing you can do, like you find the way these deer moving, like we were talking earlier about how thermals dump over ridge tops and how predominant winds, the difference in those, and we're going to show them that example in a little bit. But, the example I show you is going straight. The thermal is dropping and the prevailing wind's coming right over top, and you get that, where it mixes in. Well, what happens in your thermal hubs, think about this, and this is what I saw Crook actually do this, but when you've got a dropping thermal and predominant winds actually going along the side of the ridge there, you have that vortex going in, but if a deer gets jumped in, from underneath coming up, or if he smells something, he can go out along the edge of that where that swirl is in there and still be covering, 180 degrees in front of him.
Yeah.
Through there with his nose and moving through it. Or he can bed like that where he's got the side wind, dropping ridge, like a buck when he beds, and I'll see this, you take a buck that beds in the shadows, more than likely he's going to have that thermal dropping most of the day this way. Well, if he's bedded on the side of the ridge here, your predominant wind is coming across. These thermals are pulling that predominant wind, so he can smell everything out the side. But on top of the ridge, the same thing. He's getting the wind coming over the top from his backside, and plus out the side coming in. And I find that a lot of times they'll bed where the most pressure comes from, or take advantage of that wind that way. If people come from the bottom and coming up these long finger ridges this way, well, they'll take advantage of that predominant wind coming along that ridge top and lay up to there. So then he's got that side wind and down. And so all that just gives you an idea of, if a buck is coming off the ridge, you're finding tracks and stuff, and you look at that, you can start thinking about, okay, that's what he's doing. Why he's bedding there. Now, killing him there, it's like, I think of a place, and I'll say the state was in Ohio. I found a scrape inside of a little laurel thicket. Like, you come along clear cut and stuff, there's good sign this, but you drop back into some of the laurel brush stuff back in there, the thicket. And I looked at that and I was like, man, the bucks are going to be walking away. The wind was blowing thermals. They're going to be walking this inside of this. And, but you get in there and look at it and you're like, God, well, if I was sitting right there in this tree, I'd kill, give me 3 days, I'm going to get a shot at him. But the truth is, 3 days in there, you can't get in without him either hearing you, seeing you. There's Gabe coming with his bow. And you're going to be leaving so much residual scent in there. They're going to either go completely nocturnal in there, or you're going to blow them out. They'll just stop using it, one of the two. And you look at these spots, it's like, man. But the other thing I was going to say there, and I kind of got off track, sorry. I get so much going through my head.
Oh, you're good.
But like where we're talking, moving point A, point B, he does not have 100% advantage all the time. So maybe where I was talking about they make those turns, you set just off of that spot.
Okay, yep. You
hunt those spots there. And that's where it's so important to learn and look at the thermal. And I'll say the drop in thermal, and we can show what we were talking about earlier, is the most consistent of any of the winds. You time-wise and what that thing's going to do, that's one of the strongest things you can do. And I know Nathan does this on a lot of hit setups we've looked at, that you'll be set up to where you just have, you'll be sitting at the edge where a dropping thermal will go. You were talking about this earlier, setting over the creek.
Yeah.
Illinois, a lot of places I hunt will be dead over the creek
Yep.
in the bottoms when they're running those inside scrape lines that parallel a creek, like coming off of cornfields up top and it drop off into the bottoms. Those bucks would run up and down through there because they're getting those thermals out of the cornfield around the edges, does bed up there so they can walk that and smell all the does up in the area because the thermals, well, I'm just on the downwind thermal over the creek because that's where now if there's a creek cross, I got to know where they are because
you
I don't
be
want
on
to
the bottom side.
I want to be below there, somewhere upstream or downstream from that creek crossing. But you take advantage of those things. I see a lot of people say like deadfall. They got to walk around a deadfall. That's a good spot to do it. Well, I don't know why, and you may have heard me say this. A lot of your bucks you can let them be going through the woods and you watch them. Instead of walking around a log, they step over it. I've watched buck after buck. Ethan and Dalton and Nathan and Aaron, they all would start watching the video and I was like, did you see what your buck did? They go, I know he walked across the log. They didn't walk around the log. It has to be something bigger and brushier their horns won't go through. But, and Crook, he was doing the same thing. It's where I found where I was like, I can kill him. He's going right across this log through these saplings. And, but anyway, you find those offsets in the trail. And it might be something that, like a creek bottom where the creek makes a little bend where he's walking with nose wind, following that thermal up through there. Mm-hmm. Well, the creek makes a bend one direction to where he's got to slightly go off and, to the outside a little bit cause of a bend, set up on the other side of the creek, right off of that bend. And guess what? You've got a parallel wind. Your scent's going to be blowing down here. He's coming up through here. Mm-hmm. He's not going to get you.
Well, I'll tell you, and so in 2022, so the year after the situation I gave you, it was November 4th, and it was my last day I could hunt, and I was going up to Canada, and whatever I was doing before wasn't working, and I decided to make a switch midday, and I went down, I was in the bottom of this hub, and I dropped down in off the top was the access, came down, got to the creek, got right up the tree, and there was a giant community scrape out there in front with an opening. Well, the winds were kind of high throughout that afternoon. Not ideal. I mean, it was blowing everywhere. But my thought process was that they weren't bedding right around there, and there was some strong stuff that was happening. I was like, we're in the rut. This area was notorious, knowing it for over 10 years of that they're traveling through here. And I saw the wind, wind's going to die down right before dark. And I was like, that's my chance. Yes. And I'm right there over that water. And it was right before dark. I heard him coming up from the bottom, and I think I had grunted. And he came up, and my wind's going this way, falling down. He's coming from the same direction, but he's just out.
Off to the side.
And I shot him at 12 yards right there in front of it. And it's just like, just off enough. That's why.
Off wind, the parallel winds.
Yep.
And that, again, you're giving him every advantage. If you want more opportunities, give him the advantage more so, and just pick out those little spots like that, mm-hmm. and you will get more opportunities. Now, make the shot. Me, I'm hunting with the trad bow, and like I told you, I don't think I've shot a deer over about 7 yards last 3 years. And getting old like I am, my hands pop, shoulders pop. With a trad bow, it draw them back. I've hit them go. About time the arrow hit him, like, God, you sound bad. But just being able to find those little minute things like that. And now, all this stuff I'm talking about, for me, it's so critical. Like, I look at it as I'm a whitetail trapper. I've got to know where he places his foot, because I'm shooting wood arrows and a wood bow. I've got to have him inside that range. But now it's easier to do when you're 30 yards out with a compound, And I'm not saying it takes less skill. Don't want anybody take it like that. But you have a little bit more advantage you can take a
little more forgiveness.
Freaking rifle hunter, dude. I mean, Nathan and Dreamcatcher.
Yeah, that's that.
The Dreamcatcher had everything in the world except there was some high ground Nathan could take advantage of, that he could take advantage of a prevailing wind high and be out of the dropping thermals.
Yep.
And, the rifle. I shot the first deer that I've shot in, decades with a rifle last year, the first buck. Gabe always fusses. He's like, man, you always take a rifle and you'll never shoot one, and you want to. And I love old rifles. I love lever action rifles. And I bought a first year Browning BAR several years ago, 270, and I had it reworked. I can show it to you. It's got the kind of patina to the stock, and it's been carried in a gun rack and war, and it's just got, and I had it reworked, and the thing it'll shoot a nickel group at 100, And I was like, man, I want to kill a deer with this rifle, and, just the nostalgia of it. And Gabe's like, why don't you shoot one? I was like, nah, I just want to finish out my bow. I hunt rifle season with bow, but when me and him are hunting, I always carry my rifle if he needs a second shot. Well, this last year, Gabe and I are opening day, and we get in a blind, we're hunting, and he's got 240. He's like, Dada, my scope's loose. I'm like, what? He said, look. Oh, crap, man. And I told him, I said, man, that's what I get for not doing it, putting that on myself, trusting somebody. I said, here, shoot my rifle. It's on. And he goes, really? You need to shoot a deer with that. I was like, nah, shoot it. Well, I give him that rifle at BAR, and we're sitting there, and it's just cracking daylight. He goes, man, there's a big deer up at the end of the pastures up high. And I look at it, and he comes running across and comes down 150 yards. I said, dude, that thing, I said, way he's acting, there's a doe in there. I said, I think I'd call him in. He's like, you do? I said, yeah. I said, just get ready. Let's see what kind of gear he's got on top. But big old body deer and dark. And, man, I grunt at him 2 or 3 times, and I finally get his attention. And he starts turning, and he disappears. And he's like, man, I thought he was going to come. I said, just keep watching. And then once I look up, and here he is. And he's stiff-legged and ears pinned back. And he stopped, and I grunt too. And, I mean, you could see him puff up. And here he just, that stiff leg and come walking head sideways. And he gets the top of this knoll. And we're on one knoll in the edge of the woods, and he's on the other, and he couldn't see anything. And I was like, dude, he's about, I don't know if he's coming any further. And he's looking right straight, and the deer just falls on it. I mean, you know how they land with their legs underneath them? And everything just collapsed. And I was like, dude, he goes, man, I couldn't wait. And I was like, and he shot him and dropped him and went up there. And I mean, just, beautiful deer. It's a big 7-point, but just one of the prettiest deer I've ever seen. Really big bodied. And we were so happy. And we sit there for 4 hours and just good father, son, heart to heart talk. And, gave us opportunities as a teenager, stuff me and him I needed to say to him. And it was just, one of the best mornings of my life. Well, later in the season, I had one tag. I'd killed, I shot a spike last year, and Ethan Roderick's dad had died, and Ethan sent me Stanley's glove. And Stanley and I had cancer at the same time, and we had a whole lot of heart-to-heart talks about 2 old men and our families and everything we're feeling. God bless me, let me stay with my son, and he took Stanley, and but my only goal last year was to kill a deer with Stanley's glove, and this spike, and I'd passed up several deer, but this morning I wore Stanley's glove, and I'm sitting there, and this spike came in, and I shot it at 3 yards, and it ran down, and when I got down there, I just sat with the buck for 30 minutes and looked at it, talked to Stanley a little bit, and I just sit there and enjoyed being a bow hunter, and anyway, so I had one tag left. Well, there was an old buck with a gnarly horn on one side, and he's 4-point on the other side, big old body, and he's whipping everything out on the farm. And Gabe, he's kind of hee-hawing around, and he's like, Dada, would you kill a deer with your rifle? And I was like, what? He says, well, that'd be cool that me and you both killed deer with that rifle the same year. And he said, I'd really like that. I was like, heck yeah, I'll do it. So, and so I told him, so let's go set up with the wind, the way it's blowing, but we can set 100 yards off, and I think that buck will feel secure crossing this one, and it was a 20-yard strip. I knew we had to kill him in this 20 yards, but I said, I think he'll come through there, and he'll hesitate right there for a little bit, and I can get a shot off at him, and if he's going to move, because I knew he was coming into a mock scrape I had right below there, and man, he come out, and I shot, and I was like, did I miss him? He goes, I don't know. We went over and looked, and we didn't see anything. I said, let's back out when we got daylight and come. No blood, anything. And we circled back toward the scrape, and I sat here that night, and I thought, no, man, I don't miss. I mean, I just, sniper school, everything. I was like, I know I was dead on that thing. And I thought, we walked the wrong direction. And so next morning, crack a light, I went around right there. He laid.
Oh.
I mean, he was there, and I'd hit the dime I was aiming at on him. But me and Gabe, we were like, but I shot that one with the ad, and just, I mean, how much fun me and my son doing that together.
Yeah.
And tell you a funny one on Gabe. He killed his first deer. I think he was 7. He shot 243. He hunted 27 days before we got shot I was comfortable with. Now he could set at 200 yards and all day long and bust clay pigeons 300 yards he could. But I mean the kid could shoot, but it's snowing evening, and this buck comes down. He's about 120 yards from us, 150, and snow, just beautiful. And I was like, are you on him? Are you on him? He's like, yeah, and it's just getting low light. He clicks the gun and nothing. He goes, you didn't load it. And he said it loud. I go, dude, you didn't kick the safety. Pull the hammer back, flip that safety. So he pulled it back, and the deer's sitting looking right straight at us like this way. And I said, no, just squeeze your shot. I said, squeeze the trigger, squeeze it. Stay on him. And I said, wait till you get to get your boom. And man, this deer just again, elbows under him and drops down. I was like, what'd you do? Shoot him down the throat? And, his head was out like this. He looked around me. He goes, Dada. He was looking at me just like this. So them big eyes. And he said, so I just shot him right between the eyes. And I'm like, what? He goes, I shot him right between the eyes. And Gabe's eyes were, they were big as tennis balls. And we walk over there, and them horns are laying over to the side, each side, and the back of the head's blown out. And it would been like you shot right between the V of my glasses. He center punched that thing right there. He goes, man, I can't get it, man. I said, oh, no, that's no problem. I said, don't worry about it. We get that taken care of. But I'll never forget that. He's looking at me just like that. So I shot him right between the eyes. But we're talking about parallel wins. I'll tell you another one on Gabe. We, when I got home from having cancer, or from the surgery, and I had catheter, I had tubes out the side and this and that, but I was moving around, and he's like, man, I'm going over the farm this afternoon to hunt. And I was like, okay, Papa's over there. And he's like, here's my plan. There's a great big thicket down here, and we had a wind that was blowing straight from the west, and there's a east-west fence line there. Mm-hmm. Well, this thicket's not ours, but it's where bucks love when pressure gets on. He said, I can move right up right here and call from here. My wind will go right down. When they come across that fence, they come right with the nose wind into the fence. And I was like, dude.
Yeah.
I mean, here he is, 12 years old, 13. No, let me take it back. I guess he's 13, 14. But he's like using that parallel wind, giving the deer everything. He said when he called, said he heard that buck just come running, breaking brush, and it run out, and he shot it. Well, he called me, said, I just shot the biggest buck I ever shot. And I was like, really? And I said, I'll be right there. He goes, you can't be there. And I'm like, dude, I'm on my way. Christy's like, what are you doing? And I got these pajama flannel pants, plaid, legs cut out with catheters hanging out. I was like, Gabe shot a buck. I'm going. She goes, you can't do it. And I put a jacket on, shoes on, went out there, and I drove over there, all this stuff. And Gabe literally had to help me down the hill, but he said, it went right there in that thicket, and I thought I saw it move. I said, you be ready to shoot. You sit here, and I'll get. And anyway, I used 2 shooting sticks and my boy, and here I am. I was like, I'm not getting out of here. You're going to have to go get the truck and drive down. But here I am, like I say, catheter and all this stuff in, and man, we took it over, checked the station processor, and I mean, just, and it was it was a nice buck. But, he gave, I was so proud of him because he gave that buck every advantage, and another thing that, I don't know how long you want to go, but you tell me when to shut up. But
no, I can go forever. I know that you have.
Yeah, I got to actually interview 7:00. Yeah. Paul Brunner, but and shoot, you can set in on that one. You want to, but the other thing is that don't look at hunting pressure as a bad thing. For me and where we hunt, a lot of times, the best hunting is when the most pressure gets on. Because when you can find these little sanctuaries.
Pockets.
Yeah, and a lot of times those pockets, especially if you get, a lot of times you'll see 2 or 3 bucks trying to get an old buck, and he'll have a couple of young ones, and young ones are always on his weak side. He'll be by himself, but he'll be, how many times somebody shoot a nice buck, and 20 minutes later, here comes Louie the Mooey, behind him. They learn, well, these young bucks also learn the old buck's habits. And so, like, there's some areas that Gabe and I hunt that the more pressure we have, the better chance we have. Now, getting a shot at one of these rascals is a tough thing because they're
turned on.
Yeah. But if they're able to be in there and not harassed and not messed with for a few days, a week to 2 weeks, because they'll move into some of these areas and stay there. I know of bucks that'll stay the same place for 2 months.
Yeah.
Right in the same thicket. The more they're in there, the more they start moving and become a little bit more secure, a little bit of complacency. And that's when you can get to like your dad hunting a fringe.
Yep.
If you're smart and your access and all, you can take advantage of that and kill them. And
I had just at the time this comes out, it'll have been out, but I did a scouting video. I went into a spot where I learned that these bucks go to during gun season when pressure comes, but they actually go in just before gun season, our bear season in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Weekend before, people are driving, so there's a lot of people in the woods. Sometimes these bucks go to these spots, and I found this spot where it was multiple mature bucks that would live on this side hill, and I had a camera. I had it on video mode on the scrape, and it was opening day of rifle season, and you can hear a sound of gunshots in the background, like in the distance, and he's just making a scrape at noon.
Not paying any attention.
Not paying any attention.
Yeah, and those places, when you find them, I mean, I can drive you between here and Johnson City, and I can show you 3 or 4 spots like that. There's one spot that I set one day and glassed for, I don't know, probably glassed 2 hours, and maybe 2 acres had 7 different bucks in it. And it wasn't because of does, but had 7 different bucks in. 2 of them, there were toads. I mean, they were good Pope and young deer.
Yeah.
And so, pressure like that, you learn these pockets they move in, especially urban bucks, ditch lines, stuff right against the roads, the grown-up lanes against it, how they utilize those for travel. And like I've got areas that I go to and I pull up, and like maybe the corner fence line's going into a creek bottom along the road, and I can sit back 100, 200 yards from it with my binoculars, and once pressure gets on and I start seeing rubs popping at these intersections, I'm like, he's in that creek bottom, or he's running this. Then go to another one and look, little spots like that, and look, and I'll look for those, because they can't help but rub a tree in some intersections. And it's little stuff that, nobody looks at. And, I can look and see 2 or 3, and I'm like, okay, I got a good buck. I've got, 1.5 trees here snapped. And, I've watched spikes rub trees that are, 18 inches in diameter, but I've never seen a small buck break. I look for trees broken off.
Yeah.
And a lot of people get real excited. They find scrapes and the branches are all broke off on them. Well, a lot of times that's just frustration with them, and they start doing that. But you look for the scrapes that have the old, like where they've been broke off in the past and they've come off, but then they're worn off smooth and slick and really angling down, or grapevines. Then I get real serious about it.
The rub thing. It's
let me say one other thing real quick.
Go ahead.
The thing about the spot you're talking, and you said bucks, and had that buck in there at noon. The thing about that, when you can get those areas big enough to hold multiple, the huge advantage you have is competition at that standpoint. When competition starts taking place, scraping increases, movement increases, your ability to call and be effective increases. And so sometimes I look for that competition. Again, I told you earlier where I've got one like core pocket that butts up against another core area. And sometimes it can be just a line of cedar trees or a little creek that connects them. But when you can get that and you see everything blowing up in one area and one in the other, and you see those rubs and everything start expanding where they're approaching each other, and these may be different wood lots, but where it's starting, you see that connection, those are the areas that you can get in, because those bucks are back and forth checking the other guy out, and plus you can call them in a whole lot easier than that. That's like when I see something like that, I go in and call. And that's that buck I was showing you out there earlier. He came, sounded like somebody ran a motorcycle off the bluff, him coming off the side. And, just hard as he could go. And he was up into this other area where these other bucks were at. But the competition, that's recognizing that too.
But going back to the rub rub thing and talking about those ones that are snapped off. I remember my dad teaching me when I was younger about the beech trees because they're flexible. He's like, you really see those ones snapped off. He's like, that's something to note.
Right.
And it was a couple springs ago, me and my cousin went into this new area. Neither of us had been there before. And we both came across it from different angles. And he's like, I found some rubs that were snapped off. I said, well, 60 yards up here, I found the same type of thing. And then there was a scrape that was kind of in the center of it. But I was finding it all over. And so this past October, I went in, I was out west hunting elk. I'd shot an elk in early October. And I wasn't getting in there till middle of October, and it was actually, I think it might have been the 17th, not the 16th.
Okay,
but
16th, 17th, killer days.
Well, a cold front, everything. And I went in there and I just kind of went in blind and went in. I started seeing those rubs that were in there, and I just climbed up a tree, and it was kind of the way it was on a bench, and there was a high knob up there where I found beds. I figured they were bedding there and using this ditch to come up and come through, and I was trying to sit, just off of that where, I ended up that day, it kind of worked out. I wasn't close enough to them. But anyways, that morning, all of a sudden I see a tree going like this in the brush, and I just saw, it was obviously a wall of tines that was just in there, and I was like, oh, there he is. And he ended up, I thought he was staying in there, and I had my camera, I was recording, and I found out later he snuck out the other side, and I didn't know where he went. I just thought he kind of disappeared, but he went up on that knob, and I went in there next time to hunt it, and I think he was on to me because he came down. He circled a different way and came down the wind, and I heard just the heavy snort, and then heavy hoofs going off. I'm like, man, I screwed that up. But but seeing those, it was just going off of seeing those, those big rubs, and he was just, you could see I never got like a very clear view of his rack other than it was heavy, big tine, and you could see his shoulder muscle, just big mature buck that was doing it.
So, me, now, and I'm not saying you did anything wrong at all. Please don't take it that way. But this is where I say I'm a kamikaze hunter.
Yeah.
When I look at that and I see that buck thrashing like that, and I see those broken rubs, the broken rub tells me it's a bigger, stronger buck. That tells me that. Mm-hmm. Snapped off like that in multiple, that tells me he's pretty ticked off. He's mad. Excuse the term, but he's pissed off over something. Another buck in the area, and he is trying to intimidate. So when you find multiple like that, and you'll see, like, you get a big scrape, and you'll find stuff start popping out, and little scrapes around it. Mm-hmm. That's a competition thing.
That's exactly what that area looked like.
But now here's where I would have done different. Like I said, I'm not saying when I saw that tree that way, and I didn't see him for a second, I'd have wheezed at him so quick, and I mean a hard, just wheeze at him. Yep. And for a big buck, it's amazing what a wheeze can do if they're in the right mood. I showed that buck out there. He's, I don't remember, 22 inches wide. I think 10 or 11. I think it's 11 point. And I told you I missed him and then killed him a month later. That buck, same way. I'm sitting there watching 2 or 3 bucks, and I'll be honest, I pulled my phone out, and my buddy in Ohio, Aaron Miller, I was videoing this one I called Shredder. He would rip every tree up he come to, this buck. I told Aaron about him, and I was starting to video him, and I looked down, and I was hunting this buck. Here he comes walking 5 yards right underneath me. Well, I'm like trying to stuff that phone down. I had my recurve in my other hand, and I got that phone in, and I let him clear a cedar, and I drew back, and 13 yards is my kill spot. That's just where my line of sight is. But I came up under him. Usually I'll draw straight back. Well, I drew and kind of came up. Man, I went right under the pocket. And I was like, oh my goodness. I sat and laughed about it. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just a deer, but I was a little bit of me was sick because he looked a whole lot bigger than I thought he was, and how wide he was. And I was like, man, he was so big bodied. He was on him. He's so big bodied. He looked short couple legged. And well, I'm hunting there during rifle season, and I hear boom over ridge over, and every shot I'm thinking, man, somebody just killed my buck, and I look down at cedar thicket below me, and I just see these horns sticking out, and I'm like, oh man. Well, I looked, and he rubbed a tree there, he hit it, and then he come out in the field and he bird dogged. He bird dogs, and I was like, man, he's frustrating. And it was windy. The tree is swaying back and forth. I mean, it was dangerous. I was like, man, I'm gonna get toppled here in a minute. It was probably 25 to 50 mile an hour gusts. It was bad, and so I grunted a couple of times, and I saw his head come up once, and he looked, and he went back. He bird dogged, and he was coming up, but he was out from me, and I grunted a couple of times. And did like a roar on it. And he looked up, but he couldn't tell where it came from. And he came up the hill, and he was out about 25 yards, and he was too far for me to shoot. I was shooting my recurve, but I could have killed him, but the wind was so bad, I knew my arrow would be sideways time it got to him, and I would get good penetration. Man, I wheezed at him, and it was like you could hear his ears slap his neck, and the hair just go, come up. And he stiff-legged in, and I run an arrow through him. And, I mean, he came like you were reeling him in and wheezed that. But I looked at the buck's composure, everything about him, what he was doing. And then I shot another buck out there, and there was a buck we were after for years, and he disappeared. And then 4 or 5 years later, this buck showed up, and he's just like a huge main beam and a brow. On the other side had a brow and a big fork, real old teeth, worn to the gums. And but there was an 8-point I was hunting, and then this buck showed up. And this 8-point was, though they got in a fight, he actually, this old buck actually knocked the other buck off its feet while they were fighting. And the buck ran out past me, the 8, right under me. And it was during gun season. And I wasn't even thinking, I was like, I'm going to kill that deer, or I'm going to eat a tag this season. When I saw him, I mean, just, big old hanging down off the jaws, Adam's apple hanging down, and looked like his neck was about 6 inches long. There's just shoulders and head. And he come up, and he'd come around by those does, and that 8 was out the other side of me. And the 8 looked that way, and this buck looked back at the does, and I wheezed at him. Dude, I don't know what I said about his mama, but he turned, and I mean, same thing, just and ran an arrow through him and killed him. But, but again, that is reading and taking advantage of that second. And I was sitting there because the night before, down 200 yards over on another property, Gabe and I'd watched, I'd been hunting with him. He was hunting with the rifle. And we had watched buck running a doe, and he actually 2 or 3 bucks on her, younger bucks. So I knew about, and I thought this intersects fence line, intersects where we're at, and then there's 2 little brushy points, one on each side of the field. So it's a connector. And I was like, this, I think the highest probability of, maybe seeing a deer. And whitetail hunting is just a game of odds. Yeah. You try to pick the highest odds, and sooner or later, you're going to get, an opportunity to get a little bit of luck on your side.
Yeah. What did you say earlier when we talked? What are the 2 things that really anything that comes to whitetail hunting be successful?
The only thing, following the basics and time and stand. And I said this other night here, I don't remember, last year before last. Anyway, I had 102 sets with a bow in my hand for the season, 102, as near as I could remember. I was tagged out on bucks at 76. So I'm out there the rest of the time. I shot some does, and like I said, we shoot some does for the homeless shelter up here, have them done. But I'm learning. I'm seeing what's there. I'm learning the personality of the bucks that are out there for the next year, because the personality is not going to change much, just his experience.
Yep.
So, and besides that, I'm bow hunting, man. I mean,
Yeah, it's fun.
And I'm sitting there with, judo points, and if a fox squirrel comes across, I'm going to have some fun.
Yeah.
And it's like I told you, I'm to the point, like if I got a really good buck, I'm going to save it more than likely for Gabe. If it's on our farm where he can hunt it. But every once in a while it hits me like, nope, I'm deflating one,
Yeah.
But for the most part, I've killed enough that I don't care. If I never shoot another deer, that's 100% fine. God has blessed me so much. I'm happy. But it's getting that buck to step where I thought he was going to step and being able to shoot him. My hunt's done then. If I miss him, so what? I'm a real good hunter.
Yeah.
I'm just a lousy shot, I can go home in my backyard and work on that.
Yeah.
And, and if I could, 1,000%, I would do like fly fishing, man. If I could do catch and release, I would. And I, like, especially a buck I've got time with over that, you walk up to him and he's laying there dead, and I'll get tears in my eyes. It's like, man, you played this game. It was so much fun, and now he's gone, and that magic is gone out of the woods.
Yeah.
And,
The emptiness.
And people was like, well, if you feel that way, why do you hunt them? It's because I was born a bow hunter, man. It's just, and I love it. But now with me, it's like, it's all about Gabe, and that I just have so much fun there with him, and then I've got Charles coming up, my grandson's 6, and I think I'm gonna take him squirrel hunting this year. He's ready to kill a fish and eat it. So, but my son-in-law's, will you take deer hunting? I'm like, I don't think he's ready to see one hit the ground.
Yeah.
He may not want it. Let's try something. If he doesn't want to hunt, that's fine. But right now, he's Davy Crockett, Daniel Boone, and so pass it on. But and it makes me feel really good now with the podcast, with whether we're doing some seminars or whatever, that when somebody comes up and will be like, man, I sit and listen to that Wind series you guys did on Stick Boys, and I figured out what I was doing wrong, and I killed the biggest buck of my life. And how does that not make that's as good or better than killing a buck myself. But you have the time like that and what we can give back, and that's what especially us older guys. I'm 66 now, and give back all we can. I'm going to start trying to do some of the seminars, and I may put on a thing down here at our fly shop and just get in. And I want to do a lot with youth, like Compton and all they do with the youth, and the professional or PBS. They're coming up with some youth hunts this year and stuff. And, we all got to do our part, because if we don't, we're going to lose hunting. And I want my son and I want my grandson to have the same opportunities I have. And people don't let them on the land and stuff today, and let them get out and do, me, I used to go out and, I might go out 5 days in camp when, I was 14 or 15 by myself, and but they just can't do that. People won't let them on their land, and it's just sad. So we have to do our part, and try to teach some of this stuff in the woodsmanship. And that's why, with the podcast with Stick Boys, that I've really tried to do these, whether it's on the wind, early season hunting, doing this with you guys, just maybe inspire somebody a little bit to help out and do their part, or maybe give somebody that tidbit of information that will help them kill their biggest buck. Yeah. So
I greatly appreciate it. I love learning, and just deer hunting is a never-ending learning.
100%. I told you earlier, everybody, and Gene and I talk about this a lot. Everybody thinks we have some back pocket secret. What's your secret? Barry wins. What's your secret? No. I hunt every day that I can be in a tree stand. Barry Wenzel, man, that last year he was sick. He didn't get to. But, I mean, usually, I'll get, when season's going good, if he'll get a big buck he's passed, he'll be sending photos, or he'll send a quick thing, going to bed, dark, he'll text, he's like, how's it going? Dark to dark.
Hit.
Thumbs up, and, but it's just putting the time in. There's no, the guys with shortcuts, they're missing it. They're missing what it's about, you know. And it's like I've told Gabe, I told you he killed that first deer he did. He hunted 27 days before he shot it. Well, we were hunting a little while after that, and he said only 21 more days. And I'm like, what? And he said, well, I've hunted 6 days now. And he said, I've only got 21 more days till I get another shot. And he, little kid, but he had that mentality. It takes the time. Yeah. And I mean, I got wiping tears from my eyes. Like, yeah, he'll be a success in the woods. And he's now, I've taught him what I can teach him that he'll listen to right now. Mm-hmm. And a lot of stuff won't make sense to him, I know, but he's now, I'm so proud of him. He's branched out on his own. And he's doing stuff. He's put in a food plot, this spring of his own. And he's getting ready to put another one in. And I don't use trail cams. I like just my woodsmanship part, but Gabe's got trail cams, and we've had fun looking at the boxes. And he's learning, and he's and I've told him, if I can teach you what I know, and you're smarter than me, and you can build off this, you'll be a lot better than I ever thought about being. If you just keep doing the basics and don't take the shortcuts. And so, and it's what we all need to, as much as we can, help each other out.
100%.
Yeah. And like I said, pressure is not a bad thing either. And so, and like, you hunt with what you got. Don't compare what you're doing today to the guys that are hunting Iowa. I mean, down here, if we kill a 120-inch buck this year, I mean, we'll be doing good.
Yeah.
And that's just what we have. But now I will say this, and I've hunted from Canada to Mexico, but you take a 2.5-year-old, 3.5-year-old buck here versus somewhere with 2,000 acres private in Illinois or Kansas, and that's not knocking those states because I love them, but this 2.5-year-old will teach those bucks a big lesson on survival, because we're small wood lots and they've been hunted so much. Yep. They've got the experience. They're not, again, knowledge through experience, like PBS. That goes for deer too.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that makes a lot of
and
sense.
deer pattern you more than you pattern deer.
I believe that.
No, 100%. You need to talk to Aaron Miller sometime.
Yeah.
You need to sit out with Aaron Miller. He's one of the best whitetail hunters I've ever known in my life. And he just started a whitetail consulting thing. He's a helicopter pilot, but he's going to be doing a little bit. But he's got a video of a guy walking through in the snow and a buck coming up and trailing the guy and then going back and do it. And the buck will, 2 or 3 days, the buck has come in and followed this guy's tracks after he walks through during black powder season, you know. And I've watched it. I've watched them get on trails. I watched a buck one time in eastern Colorado, scent trail us 4 days, 5 days after we had set a stand. And he come down across their trail. He went back up where we walked off the bluff. He walked over to the tree. We'd set the stand, and then he followed the alternate trail that we had gone out with. We figured this is 4 to 5 days. Now, it's a river bottom. It was good calm, but damp, so it was still holding scent. But, you know, bloodhound or a bear can trail 4 or 5 days. This buck was 4 to 5 days, and he even went up and smelled a stump or a cut-off tree where my cameraman had sat for a little while. And was no doubt, yeah. And you know what he did? He turned, he went back up where he came from, went across the other side of the river, and went on down. Because I was sitting in a stand 150 yards.
Yeah, and you could see it.
Yeah, we watched the whole thing, and I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
You know, so.
Man,
yeah.
That's
what residual scent can do for you. Now, something else you can do, like land like around here, you can actually, they call it like when people say it about bear or about baiting, habitualize. Anyway, you can get them used to certain human patterns as normal. Example, a hiking trail.
Yeah.
And their bed and your biggest buck will be 100 yards off the hiking trail. You know, parking lot. He's 150 yards off the
gated roads where people walk back.
Yeah.
Yep. Or when I was up in Alberta, I was telling you about, that's what Jim would do on his property was he'd run the fields every day in his side-by-side. And so if he'd go drop you off as a hunter.
100%. We did that in eastern Colorado.
And he wouldn't stop the side-by-side. You had to get out while it was rolling and grab it because he's like, they're used to be doing that.
I have literally used, you can't beat a deer's nose. I don't care what anybody sells. You know, clothing, whatever you use, you cannot beat a deer's nose. If he's downwind, he's going to bust you. You can greatly reduce scent, but you ain't going to beat it. But I have used for cover scent, walking into a stand, I've gone with a diesel drag behind me where the old farmer walks with diesel boots up and down through there and walk past my stand and then J-hook back in a little bit and up to where if he's coming in and he crosses, he hits that diesel, it's no big deal. It's Joe.
Yeah.
And so I've done that in the past and it's worked. Because he's just used to this old man. And the old man, he fixed tractors and stuff all the time. And his boots, you could smell them 100 yards away. But he'd walk those fields. He could walk down a deer, walk right out and never pay any attention with him out in the field.
Interesting.
And Roger Rother, you ever read his 2 books?
I have not.
Dude, let me tell you, you need to get his old books. But he's got 2, Whitetail Magic and anyway, I've got them both in here. You need to read, but he talks about an old farmer that the deer never paid any attention to a bit in the world. But you let something else or the wife walk out and clear the field. And so
Oh, I'm gonna
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to read that. I love
Gabe
reading.
and I, here's what we do. Like when they bale hay, that's when we go in these tight bedding areas on the farm, the strips. We walk in then to there, or we drive right up, just drive right up against where I took Ethan Roderick was up here and his son-in-law here a couple of weeks ago. And I wanted to show Grant. I was trying to, I said, I want to show you the kind of places you need to start looking for bucks to bed that they hide in that everybody looks over. And I said, come on, I'm just going to take you one trip through. And we drove down this strip, and I said, that big 12 point was bedding right here, and there's buck after buck. And I said, there's bucks bedding in here right now, 3 that I know of. We didn't pull up another 30 feet. And I said, look, laying right there. And here you see the 2 ears and the horns sticking up right there. And he's from here to that door to us. And what he did, he just laid down. It's like I was telling you about the buck here at the house this morning when I rounded with the mower on the other side of the fence and started up through there. He was standing up, and when I popped out, he just laid down in that high grass.
Yep.
And, they do that. They hide like that. And I have watched them literally spend rifle season in 6 to 10 feet of blackberries and honeysuckle in the middle of a cow pasture. It's just a little washed out ditch with stuff in it. And you can see daylight, maybe the buck, or middle of the day, buck run down there and lay down in the middle of it, lay there all day long. And you'd see him there, if you'd start watching, you'd see him there 2-3 days a week, hiding in that spot, because nobody's going to go in 10 acres that's down to nubs and kick that brush pile.
There was a buck I was hunting. I missed him in 2015. He was giant, and I didn't miss him. I clipped him right on the back of the front leg, and I ended up finding the next year in 2016. I found one of his sheds in a bed that was laying in a group of trees. It was like some open, kind of swampy areas. There was a small group of trees with one little blow down there. He was bedding up against it. The shed was laying in there, and I found it in December. So it was right after rifle season ended, and there was an access trail that walked there. He could lay there, and I'm sure he watched multiple hunters walk, and he never got up. He didn't run, just laid in that spot, and it was just such an I overlooked it, and if I wouldn't have found a shed there, I probably wouldn't have thought. But it taught me a valuable lesson about that.
Yeah. Let me tell you, my dad told me this when I started deer hunting, and it is one of the best things I've ever heard about. He said, a whitetail deer is more like a cottontail rabbit than any other animal in the world. Even another cottontail half the time. And I've literally, like in blowdowns along, or not blowdowns, but where they push up timber against, after they clear cut.
Yep.
I literally stepped across a buck one time, jumping logs.
Yep.
And I happened to see his rump, and he was laying up under those logs. And it was just, I was grouse hunting.
Yeah.
But he was laying that tight.
When in Pennsylvania, deer drives are a big thing during gun season, and they hear the drivers hooting and hollering coming through, and from experience probably where they got lucky one time of running out and someone missing or whatever happened, they know that running away from it is not a good thing. So they just they almost like lay flat at times where or they'll do that, and as soon as you get past them, they'll even squirt back.
Southeastern Virginia, my aunt lived over there, and we hunted it like crazy, and they dog hunt over there. Mm-hmm. People like dog hunting, blah, blah. Man, that's some of the most fun stuff I've ever done. But, it's buckshot, and but, it's an art to it. But those deer over there, when we would hunt this one farm, we didn't run dogs on it. Well, you could sit in a stand, and this place was Southampton was the number one county in the state for deer kill. And Greenville County, I forget, it was right there with it. But anyway, we're in in Brunswick County where we were hunting the same way. But you could set a stand and you could sit there 5 days and not see a deer. It just night and this and that. And so what we started doing, we started just walking, especially the clear cuts, and jump shooting them. And we would get up. I mean, sometimes you would almost boot one. And, he'd come up and you'd have to say horns or not. You didn't have to. You killed those too. But, man, it was fun. You jump shooting. And I went over a couple of times with a bow and tried. But, I was a teenager and I never did get a shot at one. But yeah, it was fun. But, they will lay so tight like that. Yeah. And they learn what works for them. And then you get them old nasty does we were talking about that survive forever. They end up teaching the buck fawns that. And then those will be a lot of times the bucks that grow up. And like I can think of one buck he did everything. I watched that buck for years. He did everything like his mama. And I had a very foul name for his mama. But there was her and her sister, and it just like they'd bust you. I don't care where you at. Some way they would bust you. And they were two that I learned watching the zigzag, what they were doing. And they'd come up, they might pick you up down at point B and then circle around and find out exactly where you were at. I mean, once they had you, they would come looking for you.
Yep.
And figure, exactly. And then here this one year she had these two twin buck fawns. And, man, they got to where they did it. And, I watched them and that buck showed up 4 or 5 years later. He was there the first year and then disappeared. Well, he came back 5, 6 years old. And, I mean, when I watched what he did, I was like, I know that, and I ended up killing her finally and her sister. I killed both of them. One was scarred. She had a big white stripe across her face, a scar. And the other one, man, you just look at her and big old gnarly nose. And it's like, I was kind of glad to shoot her. I was real glad to shoot her. Hunting got a whole lot better. But anyway.
Well, so before I forget, because I know I will if I don't do this, but as we wrap this up, Alan, I brought you a gift. You ready for it?
Yeah.
Case Bone Trapper.
Oh,
knife.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. So Case is up by where I live at in Pennsylvania. Yeah. They're made there, and that's always my grandpa always gave me case knives. Growing up, and
man, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I love knives. I like making them. Oh man, that's awesome. That is beautiful. Well, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Oh, that is. Tell you what we need to do, though, real quick. That's cool. I have to keep a little heathen in there away from it. But, shoot, I'll send you photos skinning a deer out with that this year.
There we go. I like it.
Yeah, knife without blood on it is it's kind of blasphemy, in my opinion. But we need to show them the example I showed you earlier. So, let's see. Let's put this table over. Folks, this is one of the things we're talking about, wind. And I asked him the question, what is the difference between a predominant wind, a rising thermal, and a dropping thermal? And we'll get a camera around here so you can see this. We were talking about the rising thermal, dropping thermal, and predominant wind. So here's what you need to think about. Predominant wind is a wind that's being pushed. The whole time it's being pushed. this way. So if this is an edge of a ridge and this is a predominant wind, if it's being pushed from the back, this towel kind of sort of represents. See how the waves build up in it? When it drops over the edge of a ridge, see how you get the boop, 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 like that. So there's an inconsistency. It flops. You get a lot of back swirls, lots of eddies with it. With a rising thermal, with that, I'm going to put this at an angle. For the rising, same thing. It actually gets hot towards the top first and usually works its way down. But again, once it starts, it's coming all the way up. So you're getting a push to it. And what that'll happen when it rises, just think of even dust devils. You see those. It's a cyclonic anti-clockwise rotation to it. So you get inconsistencies with it. But here's the key on a dropping thermal. With a dropping thermal, where does it get cold first? At the bottom. So out of the shade the most. So you're dropping thermals, your cold air, it's more here. So when that air is dropping, it's pulling. If you have a vacuum, it has to fill up. So as this air is dropping, watch what happens with this towel. It's being pulled downhill. The air across the top is being pulled down. You can see the waves don't build up in it so much. So the dropping thermals, that's why they're more consistent. Even if they're coming off an edge, like the corner of a ridge or something, and you've got a predominant wind pushing, it's not as bad. So if you have a predominant wind coming with it, it can actually go across the top of the thermal. The ground thermal can still be pulled here at the same time that your predominant wind is overlapping. So you'll have this vortex up at the top that's back and forth and blustery winds, and that's a hard area to hunt. But where that dropping thermal comes in so handy, with that, you can use it for access, and you can use it if you're hunting, say, a deer crossing along this way. You can set your stand here toward the corner, and the deer's not going to get you because it's going to be dropping off to the side. So you can use those dropping thermals really to help you out a lot with that. But a dropping thermal is just a whole lot more consistent anyway. So...
All right. Well, Alan, I think with that being said there, which I'm glad you did that demonstration because I love being able to see that. When you showed me that in the kitchen earlier, it makes so much sense. And how did you figure out how to use that towel first?
How?
Yeah, just
anything. When you can use, I don't know. I've thought about water and other things, but the towel kind of, you can see the waves.
You can see it.
Build it. You can see it push what's in front of it.
I always think of it like of dumping water. Like I always thought of like a thermal hub, not to go down another rabbit hole because I have a problem with that too. But like if you were to like have a thermal hub and you dumped water, like a ton of water on the top, it's coming down fast. It hits in, it's. Yeah,
at the bottom.
At the bottom, you get that swirling versus if you slowly pour it down.
Yeah.
Or, where it's not, thinking of like a calmer, day with it. But
the dumping will usually be a 20 mile an hour, 30 mile an hour prevailing wind. Thermals, they build slow. Mm-hmm. And with that slow build, they build order with it. The order establishes because where does it start in a thermal hub? Where does that first thermal start?
Down low because
in the bottom.
Yeah, because
it's pulling. So everything's not dumping in on top of it and piling up. It's pulling out, and what's above it is just filling the void. Here's what to use.
Okay.
Take sand. I've done this with sand. Take a piece of cardboard, cover it with sand, slightly bend it into a funnel like that, and just turn it up and watch what happens. with the sand. The sand will all pour in an orderly fashion. But if you poured 2 cups out like that, but that's not what happens. What starts going first, you can even hold it at an angle and have somebody else bend the bottom down right at the bottom where it starts, and you'll see. Or you put it on an angle. Just set it at an angle and start brushing the bottom out and watch what the top does.
Okay.
Sand is awesome.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. It's awesome. And the only problem with dry ice, like up top, and I've done this, I'll build in some seminars, I'll build a little diorama, basically. Just take a black sheet of felt and fold it around and set dry ice up and let the vapors coming down. And like when you got a flat, you'll see it hit it and it'll roll on it and roll off. But it's actually falling downhill. It's not getting pulled. But it does give you a good idea of what's going on.
Okay.
And see, all this stuff, like if you go in and try to figure out, okay, prevailing wind here, the thermal here, the buck travel here. If you try to put 1,000 pieces together, man, you're going to have somebody shaking a jigsaw puzzle. Just you get that one spot and say, this is the spot on this buck's pattern that I know I have consistency here, because this little draw comes down right here and he's walking right here. So I'm going to have consistency. I know where he's walking and I've got consistency.
So then at that point, you just have to figure out, one, at that spot, how you're going to set up to be just off, and then also how you're accessing and getting out of there.
Now, I said this the other day. I've said it 2 or 3 podcasts. Here's a real good trick on finding access in the mountains. If you got access like an area you're hunting and you can see, go there as the snow falls melting off. The last hollows that melt, the last little depressions that melt, you'll go, everything else is gone, but there'll be this one, I can show you right over here on this map. I've shown Dalton and them, these little draws that melt off. That's where the least sunlight hits and probably moisture in the ground. It stays cool. Usually those places stay cool all the time. So that's always a drop in thermal. So you can take that and go right up it to that stand, to there. So you can look at that area. That's a really good way to, you can just drive your area, and if you're hunting, these ridges over here, like I said, or Dalton, there was an area that he was trying to kill a buck in. He's like, man, I can't get in and out. I'm like, after seeing, I go over it, and I sent him pictures over here of snow. I said, go over there and see where the last place that the snow's melted. Yeah. He's like, what? I said, go see. And he went over, he's like, oh my gosh, it stayed there 4 days after the snow had melted. He's like, and he goes right up, I can go right up it and just jump right over, and there'll be my stand. And that's where my stand's at. And he said, I've been coming in from the river bottom and circling top of the ridge, and I found out the buck's bedding up, by there where he can see it. And so it just something, I just look at what you got and take advantage of, you don't have to have everything. Just, again, if you can pick out exploit, like I said, I actually fought till I was almost 60 years old, competed and taught, anti-terrorism squads and police and everything. But, it was like whenever I was doing that, all I did when I'd be in with somebody, even if they were an overall skill set better, if I could find one weakness in them, that's what I'd exploit, because when you did that, you'd create something else with it. Mm-hmm. And it's the same with the deer. Find that one spot and just, it's better. There's an old analogy about a competition. One guy learned 100 different techniques, and one guy learned one technique. And for 1 year, they worked on this. This guy just took that one technique and worked for a year. This guy learned 100. And then when it came for them two to compete, this guy just destroy him, because he was good at what he does. So just figure out what's good for you, what you're good at, and whether it's using learning the thermals and again, basics, find that access and realize it. And this isn't stuff they've got to go out there and look for, I got to have this piece and this piece and this piece, find, okay, this is a good spot. Here's how to look at it. Here's a good spot to kill that buck. Oh, here's another big scrape over here to kill that buck. Well, here's a good spot to kill that buck. Well, this is a big laurel thicket. Prevailing winds come through there, and in the laurel thicket, what do? Just bounce around, and it's gusty, it's back and forth, this and that. Well, I'm not going to be able to get into that scrape, too, because it's so thick, and he's bedding up in here. I can't really get in here and not leave a lot of residual scent, let him know I'm in there. It's okay, it's not the place to kill him. What about over here where he's feeding? Well, kind of the same thing. Well, what about over here where he's coming around making this bend and they got a scrape over here? Man, I could use this thermal, come up here, sit right here, let my thermal keep drawing, and when he comes to there, I put an arrow through him. I mean, you look at the spot and say, what advantages does this spot have for the deer, and where can I exploit that? Mm-hmm. Look at that spot.
Without exploiting your own weakness.
Yeah, that's it. Where can I exploit right there? Yeah. And that's all it is. All this stuff we're talking about, it sounds, like, I've got all these tools to, make something. Well, all I need's that pocket knife, man. But I got to use it the right way. Yeah. And that's the same thing with deer hunting, Again, I'm shooting a carved out fence post or a recurve, wood arrows, and 1962 Bear razor heads. And you know what? That little piece of thread will kill more deer because, that'll be responsible for more deer dying, that thread, than most people's box of bullets will be. Yeah. I mean, the truth is. Yeah. And I mean, I don't mean this conceit, but I can go into a camp, a bunch of guys with bows, gun, crossbows, whatever, and I'll sit around and listen to them, and I think, they'll make fun of me out there with my stick and string, but my attitude is like, you guys are a serious disadvantage because I have to hunt hard. I have to do everything right. I can't make a mistake. Mm-hmm. And so I'm not going to let myself make that mistake, and therefore, I may miss him, but I'm going to have the opportunity. That's what that's the good thing about the trad. It makes me be a better hunter. I don't rely on shooting. Mm-hmm. I rely on, I rely on, again, being a trapper, being woodsmanship to make it happen. I have to. And that's a good thing. And I'll say this now, if you want to be a better gun hunter, if you want to be a better compound hunter, try hunting with a recurve for 2 or 3 years and watch how it'll make you, because here's the other side of it. Where the gun hunter, and like I said, I love guns and don't take this wrong, anybody, but at 150 yards, your hunt is over. A compound hunter at 30, 50 yards, your hunt's over. Man, mine's not even started. I've got to get him in. I've got to sit here and be waiting, ready to shoot and get him into that 10-yard and 5-yard. And you having a buck at 5 yards or a doe, any of them at 5 yards and bed down under you, and you just sitting there waiting for it to move so you can get the shot angle you need or let it get into the right position where you can hit those vitals. How much more do I learn in that last 50 yards watching that deer for 15 minutes or 30 minutes, that's more than the rifle hunter that sees a buck for 5 seconds and kills him will probably get more actual visual time, anticipation of a shot, watching the deer, learning, cues of alertness, what it's smelling, what it's doing, how it's moving, why it's moving, how it's watching everything. That's more in that one hunt than most people will experience in a lifetime.
Yeah.
Again, knowledge through experience. Gene Wenzel came up with that, that saying, and for PBS. But that's what the trad does for you. It forces you to be a better hunter, to become a better hunter. And, then if you decide, to hunt with whatever you hunt with, muzzleloader, gun, whatever, it'll surprise you. Now me, Gabe can tell you, I have trouble setting up on does. I really do. The first time I took him hunting, we were going to shoot a doe. We saw 3 bucks and one really big buck. And he looked around and he said, "Man, I can't believe all we're seeing is those old bucks," because he knew we weren't going to shoot one, And a lot of times trying to set up to kill a doe is a hard deal for me because something here, I'm just wired, think like a buck.
Yep.
It is different. And then when you get into, as Nathan talks about, an older buck, well, that's a different animal. And then when you learn the personality of some of those, and personalities, a lot of personality traits are passed on. And that's what I was talking about earlier. If you can find good bucks or how certain core areas, how the buck 10 years ago acted, and I get another buck in there, well, he may be second or third generation, but learned a lot of the same things. Mm-hmm. And then times like that, topographical features and other man-made features and stuff they won't change a lot of times, especially the topographical features. So that's a consistency. So, okay, I'm already ahead of the game. I know what they like to do when they're in here, and I know the topographical stuff. So you're way ahead of the game.
Yep.
You've already increased. You're up to 25% chance maybe of getting an opportunity at them. So, it's all, every hunt's different. People ask me all the time, like, "Man, I got this," and they'll draw out or show me a map where would kill. I'll say, "Well, I'd look here, here's where I'd start looking." But I have to get there and hunt it for a while to learn it.
Yeah. And every place has its own little nuances. And
a few years ago, there was like a big cornfield wasn't going to be planted for the first time. It's like, man, our white oaks are going to be busting wide open. We're going to have a good crop. And I was like, man, all the deer are going to be on us right on the hardwoods. And, I was so excited about it because there's no competition. Dude, we didn't see a buck for the first 3 weeks of season, or a good buck. And I'm like, what in the world? And, a preconceived idea of not being corn, that now they're going to be on us, that preconceived idea was my big mistake.
Yeah.
That was my big mistake. I wasn't looking at it for what it is. I was looking what I thought it should be. And, I learned a hard lesson on that one. But about the 16th or 17th, I come out of that. So. But, all right, we better shut up and leave these poor folks alone.
Yeah, well, Alan, like I said, I really do appreciate that. I think you're one of only two or three people now that I've had that camera's died on because we've talked for so long.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, but it's just a backup for the whole thing anyways. But I say that all in the fact that this conversation was incredible the whole way through. There's so much good information in there. And I love hearing those stories and how they all what you just said, the knowledge through experience, is exactly what comes out in what you've said, because all these things you've talked about, you might give a couple of stories to it, but you probably have 30 more that can be attached to each of those things. And that's just get in the woods.
That I've got beaten on. Yeah. Yeah.
But I highly recommend everyone, you can go check out Allan over on the Stick Boys podcast there. Do you have anything else, anywhere else that people can find?
Man, I don't do. And like I said, I don't mean.
Don't friend you on Facebook.
Well, you can try. It isn't. I just, I just don't do it. I should, and maybe I will start. Like I said, I'm probably going to start doing a few seminars. I like meeting people and the guys hunt with, but I just I love bow hunting, man. I love hunting. I love the tradition. Bob Folkrod said something to me not long ago. He said the hunting industry has turned hunting into an individual competition, an individual sport. And he said that's not what it is. It's a family tradition. And the industry, and trying to make money with it, has turned it into something that is, and me personally, I hate that. I love hearing about you and your grandfather and your father. What I was telling you earlier, Gabe wearing my grandfather's jacket that's over 100 years old, finding the 1946 license in the pocket and shooting the rifle my mama bought my dad when he got back from World War II. And Gabe killing a deer with that. Man, that's the most special part. Yeah. And I may shoot traditional, but there's nothing, archery equipment, but there's nothing more traditional to me than red wool plaid and a lever action rifle.
Heck yeah.
I mean, that's deer hunting in the mountains of Virginia. That's deer hunting,
Yeah.
And I love it. I just, I do. And I want my kids and, your kids, everybody out there, I want them to have that opportunity and have that respect and love for the animal, because, man, a whitetail deer, he's something else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They drive us nuts.
Yeah.
And love,
Yeah.
everything all at the same time.
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Allan.
All right.
And, everyone, thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next one.
All right. God bless all.
Hey guys, thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed this conversation, share it with your buddies. Leave us a rating, a review, and subscribe. If you want to check out more content like this, there's plenty in the links below. We truly appreciate having you guys along with us.